Chapter 623. The two supreme Xian experts from the Supreme Golden City saw that Ma Jiangming had fallen into a disadvantageous position and were just about to raise their swords to help when they suddenly felt something flash in front of them. Before they could even raise their guard, one of them suddenly fell to the ground with a strange expression on his face. A bloody hole had already appeared behind his neck. The other person was shocked and panicked, screaming madly as he tried to dodge. But how could he make it in time? With a schwa sound, a sword slashed down from his shoulder all the way to his abdomen. The steaming hot viscera poured out onto the ice-cold, snowy ground like a flood released from the floodgates. Bai Wu Xin howled miserably and explosively. The two supreme Xian experts behind him who had already suffered fatal injuries but were still alive also howled miserably in disbelief. On the other side, one of the two supreme Xian experts from the Supreme Golden City had fallen to the ground, while the other looked at the bloody guts on the ground and howled miserably in extreme fear. At this moment, he had not died yet. He could still feel the icy coldness of his guts falling onto the snow. This was a kind of extreme fear that could only be experienced in nightmares. But it had actually happened in real life. With their Xian Qi and experience, they should not have been ambushed so easily, and they did not even have the strength to retaliate. But the battle between Ma Jiangming and the Ruan brothers had turned into a life-and-death battle, and it had already attracted all their attention. Even now, the few of them were still pondering in their hearts. Just what was going on? Why did it suddenly turn into a life-and-death enmity? At such a critical moment, the two king of assassins had appeared out of nowhere and attacked from behind, catching them completely off guard. Not to mention retaliating, the two most unlucky people were still in a daze until their deaths. The three people in the air discovered the tragic scene on the ground at the same time, and their hearts burned with anxiety. But they could no longer stop their attacks. The battle had already reached a critical juncture, and even if they wanted to stop, it was already too late. Hong. A shocking explosion rang out. Three people, three superior supreme Xian experts, exploded in the air with their lives on the line. Three loud roars rang out at the same time, and three figures fell from three different directions. As they fell, they spat out mouthfuls of blood. All three of them had suffered heavy injuries. Especially Ma Jiangming. His injuries were the most severe. In the end, he was fighting one against two, and there was a huge gap in their strength. At this moment, the emotions of Ma Jiangming, Ruan Yin, and Ruan Yang had reached an indescribable level. Astonishment, anger, pain, grief, disbelief, these complicated expressions instantly froze on the faces of the three people who were falling through the air. For powerful existences like them who stood at the peak of the world, along with the growth of their cultivation, their self-restraint and bearing would increase along with it. Normally, even if it wasn't that they didn't show their emotions, it was still more or less the same. It was difficult to find any of these expressions on their faces, but at this moment, so many complicated negative expressions were actually displayed on the seven emotions, and it was easy to imagine how hideous their faces were. But even such a ferocious expression could not express the complex emotions they were feeling at this moment. It was even to the extent that at this moment, they'd completely forgotten to roar explosively, and they'd forgotten the hysterical roars they ought to emit from their pain. The blood fell from the sky and turned into streaks of scarlet light. However, in the eyes of the three people, the scene was the same. It was as if the whole world was frozen in that instant. Impossible. How did things turn out like this? The wretched cries of his companions, the sorrowful cries of his comrades, the wriggling body on the ground, the bloody pile of internal organs still steaming hot. The wound on Bai Wu Xian's chest continued to bleed profusely, but he still did not collapse. In truth, of the 8 experts who'd just arrived, the only one who could still be considered to have any battle strength was the injured Bai Wu Xian. Although his injuries were not light, they were not fatal. However, the intense pain he was feeling was something that even a superior supreme expert would not be able to endure. The pain on his neck and scalp was secondary. The most important thing was that his skull had been slashed open, and that kind of pain had penetrated deep into his bones, penetrated deep into his soul. Bai Wu Xian screamed shrilly, using all the strength in his body to vent the pain in his mind and body. At the same time, it was also a warning. He did not even turn around to look at the person who'd injured him, because he knew very clearly that if he turned around, he would no longer have the chance to escape death. With a shrill cry, he directly activated the man and sword as one technique, turning into a streak of light that tore through the snowy skies. With a brilliant bloody light, he fled for his life. At this moment, Bai Wu Xian's speed had already reached the peak of this world. With just a flash, his figure had completely disappeared from everyone's sight. This kind of extreme escaping speed that stimulated all the potential of the human body was something that even Mei Shuyan would not be able to catch up to. The man and sword as one technique was an extremely powerful killing technique. From ancient times until now, Bai Wu Xian was probably the first to use this technique to escape with his life. In other words, he was the first person to do so. Even when Bai Wu Xian's figure had completely disappeared, Jun Moxie still did not show himself. In the air, only that shrill cry still reverberated in the air. In fact, it seemed like it was getting louder and louder. Outside, the mountain valley, echoing cries could be heard from all directions. The experts of the three holy lands continued to pour in to provide support. The Ruan brothers and Ma Jiangming finally landed on the ground. Although that clash between them had been real, without the slightest bit of fakery, and their bodies were covered in blood, and their muscles were twisted and twisted, the three of them who knew that they were in an unknown, perilous situation immediately stood up as soon as they landed. Although there was still a trace of blood at the corner of their mouths, their bodies were still as straight as a ramrod. Chu Chihuan's figure flashed again. In the instant that they landed and stood up, a dreamlike sword light suddenly appeared. Under Ruan Yin's wide eyes, the sword turned into a streak of light and pierced straight into his chest. This was Chu Chihuan's all-out attack of death. This attack of Chu Chihuan's was extremely profound. Ruan Yin was not the weakest of the three, nor was he the most heavily injured, making him the easiest target. However, Chu Chihuan had purposely chosen him. The reason was the exact opposite. Of the three of them, only Ruan Yin still had the strength to fight. He was also the one with the lightest injuries. Although his injuries were not light, he was still a superior supreme expert. Ruan Yin had just landed and stood up. He had not even had the time to catch his breath. This was the best opportunity to kill him. As for the other two, they were already half dead. As long as Ruan Yin could be eliminated first, the other two would naturally have no chance of survival. Thus, Chu Chihuan did not even have the time to catch his breath. With the remaining power from killing two people in a row, he once again became one with his sword and rushed over to kill with one strike, a one-hit kill. If he waited for Ruan Yin to catch his breath, it would not be so easy to kill him anymore. This was the experience and keen senses of this supreme assassin. This sword did not hold back at all. Just as Chu Chihuan had predicted, after the ultimate fight between two superior supreme experts, Ruan Yin, who had been through a shocking change, was indeed unable to avoid this sudden attack of death. He did not even have the time to catch his breath. Just as he stood up, the long sword had already pierced through his body with a bright sword light and a strong, murderous aura. As the long sword entered Ruan Yin's body, the ferocious sword aura wreaked havoc in his body. The huge force even sent Ruan Yin's body flying backwards. Ruan Yin did not disappoint the strength of a superior supreme expert. Knowing that he was going to die, he let out a desperate roar at the last moment. His voice was tragic and shook the surroundings. Both his hands struck out with all his might. Using all the remaining strength he had, he landed 4 consecutive palm strikes on Chu Chihuan's body. He only managed to land 4 palm strikes, because, in the next moment, his body had already exploded from the impact of Chu Chihuan's sword aura, turning into a bloody mess and disappearing from the world forever. Chu Chihuan spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. After all, the final strike of a supreme being was not so easy to endure. In the air, Ruan Yin's 4 palms, which were on the brink of death, sent him tumbling a few times like a ball, and the autumn dew invincible sword almost flew out of his hand. Ruan Yang cried out in fear, "Big brother!" Suddenly, his body shook, and he felt a chill in his chest. He looked down in surprise and saw a shiny sword tip protruding out of his chest. A strange expression appeared on his face, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. "I was hit by a sword? How is this possible?" The shiny sword tip flashed past and disappeared. Ruan Yin roared madly and charged forward, intending to perish together with his assailant. However, his attack landed on thin air. As the last bit of his strength left him, his body was pushed back a few steps due to inertia, and he fell weakly to the ground. His legs turned soft, and he knelt on the ground. His arms swayed a few times, and his body suddenly fell backwards. His knees touched the ground, and his head fell backwards, actually touching the snow and his own heel. His entire body bent like a bow, and his eyes bulged out in anger as he suddenly stopped moving. The intense resentment in his heart made him want to see who had killed him before he died. To actually die in such a difficult position. However, he was destined to be disappointed, because at this moment, Jun Moxie was already standing in front of his next target, Ma Jiangming. Of the three, Ruan Yin's injuries were the lightest. Thus, Chu Chihuan was the first to attack. Ruan Yang was the second, so Jun Moxie was the second. As for Ma Jiangming, he was the one with the heaviest injuries. He was also the only one of the three who had lost the ability to fight. Fighting against two experts of the same level by himself, it would be strange if he was not heavily injured. There was nothing to worry about. Ma Jiangming struggled to maintain his standing posture. It was obvious that he was extremely weak, as if a gust of wind could blow him over. He coughed lightly, and blood flowed continuously from his mouth. His entire body was covered with dozens of wounds, and even his face was covered with scars. From the looks of it, his face looked even more ancient. "Jun Moxie? So it's you." Ma Jiangming laughed bitterly. His body swayed, and his eyes were lifeless. "You've really surprised this old man. Where's your lover?" "Ma Jiangming, stop pretending." Jun Moxie looked at him in Lang Lang's eyes. "Although your injuries were the heaviest, that is only when compared to the Ruan brothers. Your true injuries are far from what you've displayed. Try to play tricks in front of me is useless. Also, a month of hard work, 27 consecutive days of high-intensity eruption, and it's all gone at the end of the month. I'm not resigned. I'm not resigned. I'm not resigned. Also, a month of hard work, 27 consecutive days of high-intensity eruption, and it's all gone at the end of the month. I'm not resigned. I'm not resigned. I'm not resigned. Also, a month of hard work, 27 consecutive days of high-intensity eruption, and it's all gone at the end of the month. I'm not resigned. I'm not resigned. I'm not resigned. Chapter 624. You're lucky. You actually managed to take advantage of a loophole. Ma Jiangming was so angry that his entire face had turned purple, and he looked even more sinister and frightening. If it weren't for these two bastards causing trouble for no reason and suddenly acting like they were having an epileptic fit, how could you have succeeded so easily? The heavens really toy with people to this extent. This old man actually got together with those two bastards. It must be the will of the heavens. However, this old man managed to escape after those two bastards. This battle is this old man's victory. The will of the heavens. Haha, I can't help but admire your stupidity. You actually don't know how you died, even when you're about to die. Do you think that you've won against those dead brothers? Idiot. Jun Moxie laughed loudly and raised his sword. Die. This young master has no interest in wasting time with you. Could it be that this was all you're doing? Ma Jiangming's eyes suddenly widened, and his expression slowly changed from one of shock to one of malevolence. So it was you. So it was you. Die for this old man. He roared loudly and suddenly flew up. The sky was filled with silver light, and a streak of purple lightning shot out. The momentum was not weak at all. Jun Moxie snorted coldly. His body moved slightly, and he actually disappeared from sight. When he reappeared, he was already behind Ma Jiangming, and he slashed out with his sword. Ma Jiangming's body suddenly leapt up, but it seemed like he was unable to dodge in time. Although he managed to avoid the fatal point on his back, the sword brushed past his legs and pierced into his crotch. Speaking of which, even Jun Moxie hadn't expected that this sword would actually succeed so easily. He had already prepared several moves and was prepared to react at any time. Even if a superior supreme was heavily injured, how could it be so easy to kill a superior supreme in a frontal confrontation? After all, a frontal confrontation was different from a sneak attack. However, this sword had directly castrated Ma Jiangming, and it went so smoothly that even Jun Moxie was shocked. This kind of injury would be difficult for any man to endure. Even a superior supreme would not be an exception. In the end, that was the most painful part of a man. However, a sudden change occurred. Just as Jun Moxie thought that he had succeeded, Ma Jiangming, who had clearly been struck in his vitals, suddenly retreated at full speed. It was as if he did not feel the sword at all, as if he did not even feel the slightest bit of pain. With a backhand slap, he landed a heavy blow on Jun Moxie's shoulder. Jun Moxie was greatly surprised. He didn't expect that this guy, as a man's most important part, could still be so vigorous and fierce. He was really a fierce person. A cracking sound came from his shoulder, and the bones seemed to have been dislocated. With a muffled groan, he was sent flying with his sword. To his surprise, he discovered that the sword was as cool as water. There was not a single trace of blood on it. He could not help but widen his eyes. As he flew backwards, he could not help but exclaim in surprise, F***ck me. So you don't have anything down there. A man's greatest pain was indeed something that no man could endure. The only ones who could endure it were those who were not men. Ma Jiangming laughed heartily as he chased after them, with a sinister look on his face. That's right. I don't have anything down there. You didn't expect this, right? Ha ha. He was laughing so loudly, as if it was a glorious thing to be proud of that he didn't have anything down there. He even seemed a little proud of himself. Jun Moxie could not understand what was going on at this moment. In the distance, Chu Chihuan, who was meditating, could not help but retch. As a man, he was actually so proud of himself when he didn't have anything down there. No wonder this fellow loved to torture beautiful women to death. So that was the reason. It was because he was helpless in front of beautiful women. Jun Moxie was both angry and amused at the same time. No wonder this fellow was still able to retaliate. His shoulder was burning with pain, but he still laughed heartily. F***ck, so you don't have anything down there. It's rare for you to be so proud of yourself. You really are a F***king genius. At this time, Ma Jiangming had already caught up to him. With a sinister smile, he said, So what if this daddy doesn't have it? It's precisely because I don't have that thing that I've saved this daddy's life. You do have it, but it's going to be wasted. This daddy will make sure that you won't be able to use it even once in the future. He attacked fiercely. Swords, silver needles, fists, and kicks rained down like a torrential storm. Jun Moxie laughed heartily, and his entire body disappeared inexplicably in the midst of his laughter. Right in front of Ma Jiangming, under his widened eyes, Chu Yang had mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Ma Jiangming's sure-kill attack had been unleashed with a hong sound, but the person in front of him had already disappeared. He could not help but be startled. Turning around, he raised his guard. Suddenly, he felt a heart-wrenching pain in his crotch. With a strange cry, his entire body was sent flying into the air, flailing about wildly. Jun Moxie had ruthlessly kicked Ma Jiangming's crotch from below. The huge force of the kick had sent Ma Jiangming's body flying into the air. Ma Jiangming didn't even have the time to scream before another invisible kick landed on the same spot. In the air, Jun Moxie shouted coldly, I'll let you have nothing down there. I'll let you be F***king proud that you don't have anything down there. 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 Following a series of curses, kick after kick landed on the same spot. Ma Jiangming's body continued to be kicked upwards, and his lower body also continued to be kicked fiercely, all of them landing on the same spot. Not to mention that Ma Jiangming didn't have anything down there to begin with. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to recognize it now. At the very least, he wouldn't be able to recognize what it was below. Chu Chihuan's mouth was wide open, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He watched as Ma Jiangming shot upwards like a rocket. He was already over 100 zhang above the ground, and he was still persevering to rise higher into the sky. Hearing the continuous sounds of kicks, Chu Chizuan suddenly felt as if the roots of his teeth had gone soft. From the strength of these kicks, this old man with a face full of vicissitudes of life would probably die within 2 more kicks. It must have been tough for Jun Moxie to actually kick him 200 times in one go. This guy who doesn't have anything down there is a pervert. That guy who has something down there is also a pervert. Mother Faster's are all more perverted than this daddy. This was the conclusion that Chu Chihuan came to. With his sound, Jun Moxie appeared in front of him and said hurriedly, "Quick, dodge. The people from the 3 holy lands are coming again. There are at least 100 of them this time." Just now he had risen to the sky, and he had clearly seen the silhouettes of people flying over with the speed of the wind, more than 100 people. This was definitely a terrifying force. With their current strength, they definitely wouldn't be able to contend against such a strong force. Chu Chihuan was still in a state of shock. He raised his head and looked at the sky. Ma Jiangming was still flying upwards, and he had already shrunk to the size of a soybean. Then he looked at Jun Moxie in front of him and was still puzzled. How had this brat suddenly come down? That guy who doesn't have anything down there is still flying up like a little bird that was beaten by him. How did he suddenly appear on the ground? Jun Dashao pulled Chu Chihuan up and rushed into the snow cave, where Mei Shuiyin and Dongfang when Xian were hiding. There was no time for him to say anything, and he immediately activated the power of water. Snow was formed by water, and in the end, it was still a form of water. The snow under the 4 of them suddenly rose into the air, revealing the solid ground. The 4 of them landed on the ground at the same time. Before Chu Chihuan had the time to be surprised, Jun Moxie pressed down with his hands, and Chu Chihuan felt that he was falling down endlessly, as if there was a natural bottomless abyss below him. "Are you trying to kill me? What's going on? Isn't this too fantastical?" Swoosh, 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 swoosh. In the outside world, countless figures were flashing everywhere. Just as Jun Moxie and Chu Chihuan disappeared, they arrived at the snowy ground where a fierce battle had just happened. From afar, there were still many figures rushing over as if they were old men. On the snowy ground, everything was red. Fresh blood was dripping everywhere. The 2 halves of his body were separated by a long distance. His arms were still in a crawling position. There were also pieces of flesh scattered evenly on the snowy ground. Ruanyang was using that weird posture to support himself on the snowy ground. He was already completely dead. There was another person with his stomach full of intestines and organs hanging out. Obviously, he was in extreme pain before he died. From the looks of it, the other half of his body had struggled for a long time, because the other half of his body was still 3 zhang away. In the middle, there was a thin intestine that had been pulled out, and there seemed to still be some heat left. Such a scene, even hell would not be so cruel, right? Everyone stared blankly at the scene in front of them. At the same time, they felt their stomachs churning and their atoms apple-bobbing up and down, as if they were swallowing something. But their faces were filled with hatred, and their eyes were filled with endless hatred. The people from the 3 holy lands had finally arrived. There were actually close to 150 people, and this was only those who were nearby. There were still quite a number of people who had rushed over without hearing the news. The different attire of the 3 holy lands was especially dazzling on the snowy ground. Cruel. This supreme assassin Chu Chihuan is truly vicious and evil to the extreme. If we don't get rid of him, the pugilistic world will not be at peace. On the side of the hermitage, an old man with a snowy white beard looked at the scene in front of him with pity and sighed deeply. Second Master is right. Chu Chi actually dared to torture the people of our three holy lands like this. If we catch him, we will definitely cut him into pieces and grind his bones into ashes. The one who spoke was precisely Zi Jinghan. At this moment, his face was a little twisted. Looking at Ruan Yang of the illusory blood sea dying in such a strange manner, the anger and grief in his heart had already reached the limit. In order to encircle and kill Chu Chi, the illusory blood sea had already lost 5 superior supreme experts. At this moment, this lawless and resourceful illusory blood sea looked at the benevolent old man in front of him with a hint of fear and evasion in his eyes. It was as if his soul was trembling. The person whom he called Second Master was the leader of the Hermitage's operation this time. Obviously, the Hermitage was really angry this time, and he was really hurt. They actually sent out this human king who was second only to the palace lord. This second master had a benevolent look and a sincere face. In fact, he even looked a little wooden. His eyes were full of compassion for the state of the universe and the fate of mankind. At a glance, he looked like a typical good person. If there was a story of a farmer and a snake in this world, then everyone would believe that the farmer in the story was him. He was really too kind, too honest. This kind of person would definitely be easy to talk to, very soft-hearted, and very understanding of others. In summary, this person was definitely very gullible. This was the first impression of everyone who saw him for the first time. Chapter 625. Third Watch. This person was a standard gentleman who could be deceived. However, those who were familiar with this person knew that he was an extremely venomous rattlesnake. A person who looked like a gentleman was never a real gentleman. He was more hypocritical than a crocodile and more ruthless than a wolf. Blood-handed gentleman, good dead soul. These were his nicknames. His name was very kind. It was called Zhen Sibei. This name was kind and funny, but no one in the world dared to laugh at it. They did not even dare to laugh behind their backs. This was because Zhen Sibei was not merciful at all. 200 years ago, there was a city lord who offended him. He went to the city lord's door to denounce him, but he was surrounded by the army. In a fit of rage, Zhen Sibei went on a killing spree for 3 days and 3 nights. With his own strength, he completed the magnificent feat of slaughtering a city. After all, although the city was small, it still had a population of nearly 100,000 people in it. There were soldiers, Xian, cultivators, officials, and commoners among them. This Zhen Sibei did not distinguish between right and wrong and killed them all. The old, the weak, the women, and the children were not spared. 3 days later, the city became a dead city. Not even a single dog managed to escape. Not a single survivor was spared. The most outrageous thing was that after the killing, this man did not show mercy. He took a big vat filled with human blood and wrote a few words on the city wall. The heavens are merciful. I am merciful too. I am merciful in the name of enforcing justice. Slaughtering 100,000 people and claiming to be merciful in the name of enforcing justice. This was the biggest joke in the world. An ordinary expert would be tired after killing a few dozen people, but this Zhen Sibei did not even bat an eyelid when he slaughtered 100,000 people. He even thought that he was doing a good deed and was merciful. Truly merciful. The entire Jianghu was in turmoil because of this matter. Countless experts swore to kill him, but his Xianxi was too profound and almost no one could stop him. In the end, the palace master of the elusive world of immortals personally took action and defeated him. Then, he disappeared without a trace. It turned out that he had joined the elusive world of immortals and had taken on such an important role. Zhen Sibei stroked his beard and sighed sorrowfully. That Chu Chi has committed such a perverse act, we naturally cannot let him off. We are patrolling on behalf of the heavens, so we should enforce justice on behalf of the heavens and eliminate this calamity for the human world. A middle-aged man wearing a tall hat and a hemp robe spoke. His face was long and narrow, like a horse's face, but also like a donkey's face. His eyes were long and narrow, like 2 slits. Right now, these two slits were flashing with a bloodthirsty light. Langling looked at Jun Sibei and sneered. Old Jun, are you trying to be a gentleman again? Are you going to be merciful again? This person did not have any scruples when facing a peerless killer like Jun Sibei. It was obvious that Jun Sibei was on equal footing, but Jun Sibei was not angry at all. This person was the third castellan of the Supreme Golden City, and also one of the leaders of the Blood Sea. Absolute heaven, absolute earth, and absolute world, Du Ju. His name was Du Ju. This name was very extreme, and the person with this name was also very extreme. He was exactly like his name. Not only was he ruthless to his enemies, he was even more ruthless to himself. It was said that in order to practice his swordsmanship, when he was tired and dissatisfied, he stabbed himself in the thigh until he was satisfied. If a person could be so ruthless to himself, one could imagine how he behaved in the world. Du Ju and Jun Sibei were the true pinnacle of the world, venerable ones. The compassionate, venerable Jun Sibei and the heartless, venerable Du Ju. Whoever met Jun Sibei was bound to be merciful. Whoever met Du Ju meant that he had reached the end of his life. A gentleman's virtue is shown in every word and action. How is this showing off? When it's time to be merciful, we will naturally enforce justice on behalf of heaven and return peace to the world. Jun Sibei sighed and said solemnly. Along with his white hair and white beard, he looked solemn and solemn, as if he was holy and inviolable. But when everyone heard his words, all of them shuddered without exception. At this moment, the wind whistled in the sky, and a blurry shadow fell from the vast sky like a meteor. The speed was as fast as a meteor, like lightning. Du Ju's eyes flashed, and he suddenly shouted. His body did not move, but he floated up and went up to meet the attack. His palm was like a knife, and it was suffused with the color of blood. He did not even blink, and with a swoosh, 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 he struck more than 10 palm knives. Every knife hit its mark. Not a single knife missed its mark. The person who had fallen from the sky had been chopped into 17 or 18 pieces, scattering in all directions. Good skill. Venerable Du's palm knife is so handsome. This move is indeed extraordinary. Several people cheered in unison. At the same time, they were flattering him. However, Du Ju had already fallen down. His face was flushed red, and it looked very ugly. He was a little angry, but also a little depressed. With a pong sound, a ball-like head smashed into the snow, then bounced up and rolled a few times. His face was facing the sky, and his eyes were wide open. He was as thin as a skeleton, and his face was full of wrinkles and vicissitudes. It's Ma Jiangming. Why did he run up to the sky? We've been here for quite a while, and he only came down now. How high did he jump? The people of the Supreme Golden City cried out in alarm. They were full of questions. This unfortunate person who had been dismembered and beheaded by their third city lord was actually an expert on their side. However, they did not dare to say anything else. They did not even dare to go over to take a look. Everyone had a strange expression on their faces. That was because Du Ju's face had turned even darker. His donkey-like face seemed to have become even longer, and his body seemed to be emitting a murderous aura. He had elegantly leaped up and struck with all his strength. He had wanted to show off his might in front of everyone, but he had ended up chopping his own people into pieces. One could imagine how embarrassed Venerable Du was right now. Ha ha! Venerable Du's palm knife is so handsome. With a wave of his hand, he chopped this merciless man with a face full of vicissitudes of life into 17 or 18 pieces. This kind of skill is truly earth-shattering. Amazing. Is indeed amazing. Worthy of being called Venerable Du Ju. Jun Sibei smiled amiably. He spoke in a solemn tone, as if he was praising Venerable Du Ju from the bottom of his heart. There was not a trace of ridicule in his tone. Du Ju snorted coldly. Suddenly, he tilted his palm and raised it in front of his chest. A sharp palm knife went straight towards Jun Sibei without making a sound. Jun Sibei laughed loudly. He waved his sleeves, and with a schwa sound, Ju's palm knife suddenly changed direction and cut deeply into the snow-covered ground. Jean Sibei and Ju were startled at the same time. They looked thoughtfully at the snow-covered ground under their feet. You guys collect the corpses on the ground first. Isn't it too pitiful to leave these corpses lying in the wilderness? It's better to bury them in peace. Don't avoid the filth. The dead are the most important, Jean Sibei casually instructed in a pleasant manner. His face was full of grief. A few people in white immediately came out from behind him and quickly collected the corpses on the ground. Everyone, let's work together and clear all the snow in this slanting valley, Ju and Ling ordered. The snow in the entire valley was as thick as a mountain. However, Ju did not hesitate at all and gave the order. It was very easy, as if he was saying, just sweep the dust here, it's so easy. 10 highly skilled martial artists from the great Golden City stood up at the same time. Their bodies slowly expanded, and suddenly they let out a muffled groan and struck out their palms at the same time. The violent gale turned into a huge shovel and swept up the thick layer of snow in a radius of several hundred feet. Then, another 40 to 50 people moved at the same time. With a loud bang, a huge layer of snow was lifted up and flew high up into the sky. Then, it fell outside of the slanting valley. Such a large area of snow would weigh more than 10 million pounds. It was actually thrown out just like that. Black soil could be seen on the ground. There was a difference of 3 feet between the soil and the snow that everyone was standing on. Ju and Jean Sibei and Ling looked on and continued to order expressionlessly. Again, the second wave of cleanup was done by the elusive world of immortals. The third wave was naturally done by the illusory ocean of blood. It must be said that the group of supreme martial artists were very confident, and their strength was very strong. They had only rotated once, and a large area of the slanting valley had already been cleared. It was obviously an almost impossible task, but a lot of it had been completed in a short period of time. With such efficiency, it would not be difficult for them to clean up this place, and it would not take too long. The loud rumbling sounds of the mountains collapsing and the earth cracking were incessant. It was the sound of the large chunks of snow being thrown out. It seemed as if the whole earth was shaking. With their venerable level spiritual senses, Ju and Jean Sibei could faintly sense that there was definitely something special beneath the layer of snow. Otherwise, they would never believe that a mere Chu Chi Hun could kill 7 experts in one fell swoop and even cause a supreme martial artist to flee in a sorry state with serious injuries. If it was the venerable Mei, this kind of result would still be reasonable. But Chu Chi Hun? What virtue or ability did he have? Even if the 8 experts were to kill each other, Chu Chi Hun would not be able to reach such a level. The conclusion was impossible. Jean Sibei looked at the movements in front of him, and without turning his head, he called out, "Bai Wu Xian, come here." Bai Wu Xian's heart was wrapped in a thick white cloth, but the bone-piercing pain was still tormenting him, causing him to grit his teeth from time to time. His bones had almost been pierced through by a sword. The fact that he was still able to stand here was already a feat of steel. Hearing Bai Wu Xian's words, he hurried over. He asked respectfully, "What instructions does Second Master have for me?" Towards this Lord Jean Sibei, no one had ever dared to call him Second Palace Master. Everyone addressed him as Second Master, because this Second Master's temper was much more violent than the Lord's. When the Lord was angry, he would at most be locked up or given some punishment. But when the Second Master was angry, then mercy would descend. Tell me everything that happened in detail. Don't leave out anything. Even if it's inconceivable, you have to tell me everything. Jean Sibei raised his eyebrows and said in a heavy tone. Chapter 626. At this time, Bai Wu Xian's heart was in so much pain that it felt like it was about to split open. Being able to stand up and reply was already a difficult feat, but facing the questioning of this true grandpa, he did not dare to be negligent. Left with no choice, he could only explain everything in detail once more. He did not conceal anything, no matter how big or small. Even now, Bai Wuxian's anger towards Ma Jiangming and the Ruan brothers had not dissipated. Naturally, he would speak the truth. If not for those three bastards suddenly fighting amongst themselves, would this daddy's head have been slashed open like that? Just a hair's breadth away from splitting my brain. My heavens, that's going to take my life. Even though Ma Jiangming's head and Ruan Yang's corpse had already been placed to the side, Bai Wuxian's anger was still not appeased, and he almost wanted to kick them again. As they listened to Bai Wuxian's story, the faces of Zhen Cibei, Du Ju, and Zi Jinghong all darkened, towards the three of them suddenly acting like rats in a nest. The three of them were extremely confused, no matter how they looked at it. The three of them should not have acted so rashly. Inspect the corpse carefully, Zhen Cibei and Ling Ling ordered. The three of them walked over to the corpse and inspected it carefully. Du Ju was extremely ruthless. With a schwa sound, he directly stripped Ruan Yang's corpse clean. Then he pieced Ma Jiangming's corpse back together, and it was actually extremely complete. Second brother Ruan's body clearly has many needle marks all over his neck, thighs, buttocks, back. There's a total of 21 times. Ma Jiangming is an expert in flying needles. Could it be that this was done by Ma Jiangming? Furthermore, there's a pool of blood at second brother Ruan's crotch. It's from his back. He should have been injured there. The location of the injury is too strange, and it's hard to determine what it was caused by. From the blood flow, it's very likely that it was a hidden needle weapon. But after searching the surroundings, we only found a few needles, far less than the location of the injury. Furthermore, there's no trace of blood on these needles. This is extremely strange. Zi Jinghong naturally wanted to find an excuse for his men, but the more he spoke, the stranger his expression became. In the end, he decided to just shut his mouth. What would it take to plot against the superior supreme expert's backyard? Even if he racked his brains, he wouldn't be able to come up with an answer to this question. It couldn't be that the second son of the Ruan clan would just stick up his butt and let himself be blown up, right? That was a little too ridiculous. One couldn't help but admire Ma Jiangming's methods, as expected of this soul-chasing, shadowless needle. How domineering. Du Ju's face darkened, but he didn't say a word. He continued to examine it carefully, his face as dark as the bottom of a pot. There's no need to look any further. Ma Jiangming must have ambushed them from behind, toying with them. The two of them couldn't bear the humiliation and retaliated in anger. The real life and death battle should have started after the second son of the Ruan clan was struck in his back. Such a great humiliation naturally turned into anger, and the three of them fought to the death. As for the needle marks and no steel needles, I think it's because Ma Jiangming had only used ice needles at the start. Zhen Cibei snorted and gave his conclusion. His conclusion was basically the same as the truth. It could be seen that this person's reasoning ability was very good. The only mistake he had made was that he had pinned the blame on Ma Jiangming for the person who had used the ice needles. Zi Jinghong and Du Ju were also thinking the same thing. So, they couldn't help but nod in agreement. Ma Jiangming was known as the soul-chasing, shadowless needle. So, it was reasonable for him to be able to do this. However, Ma Jiangming's injuries were even stranger. The real cause of his death wasn't a sword wound. Instead, it was a continuous kick to the lower part of his body. Then, someone continued to beat him until his 5 viscera and 6 bowels were smashed to pieces. Then, someone mercilessly kicked him several dozen times in the same place, sending him flying high into the sky, kicking a person to death, and then continuously kicking the corpse high up into the air. Only when we arrived did it finally land. Du Ju sighed heavily, furrowing his brows as he looked at the pieces of Ma Jiangming's corpse that he had dismembered. This person's methods are extremely cruel and terrifying. His grandmother. He's even more ruthless than me. He's an out-and-out perverted murderer. Otherwise, Du Ju, with our strength, killing Ma Jiangming wouldn't take much effort. But do you really have the ability to continuously kick him over 100 zhong into the sky? Zhen Cibei Langling looked at him and said mockingly, "At the very least, I don't think I have the ability to do it. If you can, then I must congratulate you." It turns out that you've already broken through to the venerable realm. Du Ju instantly understood Zhen Sibei's meaning. That's right, kicking him over 100 zhang. Then, the person who did it would have to follow Ma Jiangming's corpse all the way up. Does such a high-level movement technique really exist in this world? There was no need to breathe, no need to breathe, no need to borrow strength. To kick him in the same place as he was in the air, Du Ju sucked in a deep breath. Suddenly, he felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. That's not impossible. The Eagle King and the Crane King of the Tian Fa Forest can also do it. Zhen Sibei's eyes flashed. He didn't say anything. This was something he hadn't thought of. His previous judgment was completely based on Xin techniques. This matter couldn't be explained by humans. If it was done by a flying-type beast king, then everything was reasonable. At the very least, it could be explained. Zhen Sibei twirled his beard and muttered, "Could it be that Tian Fa also participated in this battle?" At this time, Ma Jiangming's corpse isn't complete. There's still a very important object missing. Du Ju took a final look and discovered that something was wrong. Even if he was kicked away, there should still be traces. Even if he was kicked into a pulp, he should still be hanging there. How come that thing is gone? Isn't this the same as dying without an intact corpse? Death is a big deal. Let's bury his corpse in one piece. Someone help us look for it. 3-star king level master, Xiao Weiqing stumbled over. 3rd city lord. That Ma Jiangming, he didn't have anything down there in the first place. Du Ju's face turned pale. Turning his head, he spat on the ground. King bad luck. Just as they were fighting until their eyes were red, and they were about to become one with the sword, Chu Chihuan suddenly appeared. Bai Wu Xian saw that the big shots had finished inspecting the corpse and continued. "Stop!" Zhen Sibei waved his hand and thought for a moment. Then he called over 5 people and had them stand in their positions. "Continue speaking. Was this the position you guys were standing in?" "Yes." Just like that, in that instant, I suddenly felt a sense of danger. I charged forward, but I was still heavily injured. Only then did I realize that the 2 companions behind me were already dead. At the same time, the other 2 were also killed. One was stabbed in the back of the neck, and the other was slashed from the shoulder all the way to the abdomen. "Wait!" Du Ju waved his hand and interrupted him. Going over to inspect the injuries of the corpses, he said, "Hermitage was ambushed first, and then the Supreme Golden City. In that case, this doesn't make sense." "That's right." Zhen Sibei nodded his head and fell into deep thought. Du Ju leapt up soundlessly, disappearing into the snow. Following that, he suddenly appeared beside the 5 people, his hand in a sword stance. Then he swept his sword horizontally, stabbing towards the back of the head of the person standing at Bai Wu Xian's position. Then, with a schwa sound, he appeared behind the 2 people from the Supreme Golden City. Pausing, he shook his head and said, "It's impossible. The murderer is definitely not one person. There must be at least 2 people. That's right, there must be at least 2 people acting at the same time for this to happen. Furthermore, these 2 people must have the strength of a top-notch assassin like Chu Chihuan. This kind of meticulous grasp of timing is extremely rare. Although our people are all paying attention to the battle, they still have the vigilance of a supreme martial artist. Any slight movement of the grass in the wind would be enough to deal with it. Thus, the 2 assassins who acted this time are both top-notch experts. If it was just Chu Chihuan alone, there's no way he would be able to do this." Zhen Sibei Lengling looked at Bai Wu Xian and said, "Bai Wu Xian, your report is not true. You're so afraid of death that you didn't even dare to turn your head and ran away. Yet, you're still trying to mislead us with false information. What's the meaning of this?" Bai Wu Xian's face turned pale with fright, and his lean face was filled with panic. "Second Master, what do you mean by this? I, Bai Wu Xian, have already been in the Hermitage for 100 years. Could it be that Second Master still doesn't know what kind of person I am? There's no need to mention the past. Right now, I only know that you're afraid of death, running away when you're in danger, not caring about your own brothers and comrades. Furthermore, you're making things up out of nothing, spouting nonsense to mislead us. Bai Wu Xin, someone like you truly deserves to die. Zhang Sibei looked at him coldly, the killing intent in his eyes growing thicker and thicker. Bai Wu Xin, this seat shall bestow you with mercy today. If you're willing to take your own life, you can leave your corpse intact. But if this seat takes action personally, the result will be hard to say. Bai Wu Xin retreated 2 steps with a schwa sound, his face filled with grief and indignation. Second Master, if you want to incriminate me, there's no need to worry about excuses. At that time, Bai Wu Xin didn't want to run away. But if I didn't run with all my strength, even if I hesitated for the slightest bit, I would still have died under the enemy's sword. Second Master, where did your information come from? I, Bai Wu Xin, would rather destroy my own reputation to bring back information and show my sincerity towards the Immortal Palace. How could I possibly intentionally mislead you? Unfortunately, there was no meaning in any explanation. A benevolent smile hung on Zhang Sibei's face as he floated up like a white cloud. His palms slammed down as he said coldly, "No matter how glib your tongue is, you won't be able to escape death today. If you don't die, how can you atone for your sins? Are you really not willing to take your own life?" Bai Wu Xin parried with all his might, his expression filled with grief and indignation. With a schwa sound, his sword flew out of its sheath. He shouted in grief, "Zhang Sibei, I will never give in to your perverse ways. Let's see if your mercy can really reach me. You still dare to use your sword against me, overestimating your own abilities. I've already given you a chance, but you're the one who gave it up." Zhang Sibei laughed savagely as he clasped his hands together and roared, "Trap!" An inexplicable force burst forth from his palms, vast and boundless, as if connecting the heavens and the earth. Bai Wu Xin suddenly found that he couldn't move a single muscle. In fact, he couldn't even blink his eyes. This was the power of heaven and earth that only venerable experts could comprehend. Power of heaven and earth, become my cage. This was already a tiny bit of the power of heaven and earth. This kind of power, only Mei Shuyan had ever used it before. Chapter 6:27. Bai Wu Xin stood there in a daze, trying his best to struggle, but to no avail. His eyes were filled with despair as he watched Zhang Sibei's hand land on his forehead. With a pa sound, his brains burst out, and his entire head was smashed into pieces like a watermelon. His death was too horrible to look at. Everyone was silent, out of fear. Du Ju looked on coldly from the side, a dark expression on his face. A superior supreme, and Zhang Sibei had actually killed him without the slightest bit of mercy. Bai Wu Xion's corpse slowly fell to the ground. At this time, the crowd outside suddenly exclaimed in shock. Zhang Sibei and Du Ju turned around, only to see a huge hole the size of a house on the left side of the mountain. It was pitch black, and it was hard to tell how deep it was. There's indeed something strange here. Zhang Sibei stroked his beard, a bright light flashing in his eyes. "Come, let's go take a look." Underground, Chu Chihun looked at Jun Moxie as if he was looking at a ghost. "You've won," Supreme Chu said, sighing in disappointment. "I can't compare to you, and I'm ashamed of my inferiority. You are the true king of the world of assassins, fully deserving of the title. The title of Supreme Assassin no longer belongs to me." Chu Chihuan's voice was filled with disappointment, shame, admiration, and praise. Chu Chihuan watched everything unfold, and he knew clearly that he had lost, and he had lost convincingly. On the surface, it seemed like he had killed 2 great masters from the Supreme Golden City and 1 superior master from the illusory Blood Sea. Jun and Mo Xie had also killed 3 of them with a sneak attack and injured 1. As for Ma Jiangming, he didn't even count. On the surface, Jun Moxie only had the upper hand, and the gap was very small. But Chu Chihuan knew very well that he had lost completely, because all of this had been planned by Jun Moxie. All the opportunities had appeared because of Jun Moxie's plan. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been the result. Chu Chi-hun was good at making use of opportunities and seizing them. Any small opportunity would be grasped by him. Using his elusive movements, it would be a fatal blow. As an assassin, this seemed to be enough. He had always been proud of this, and had always thought that this was enough. But today, in front of him, this young man had used reality to teach him a lesson. As an assassin, a top assassin, not only must he know how to make use of opportunities, but he must also use all means to create opportunities when there are no opportunities. If Chu Chi-hun were to face these 8 experts by himself, he would only be able to kill one of them with a sneak attack. Even if he were to be surrounded by so many strong enemies, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed, because he would have to face the joint attack of the other 7 experts. However, Jun Moxie had cleverly created an opportunity to annihilate all 8 of them in one fell swoop. This method was close to a miracle. The gap between them was completely incomparable. Taking advantage of opportunities is passive, but creating opportunities is active. Only by creating opportunities, one can grasp the best opportunity. Just waiting for others to be careless was like waiting for a rabbit to come to them. Chu Chi-hun had every reason to believe that even if Ma Jiangming and the Ruan brothers had not had a dispute, Jun Moxie would have used other methods to attract their attention or used other contradictions to incite them to fight. He could definitely do it. However, he had never thought about this aspect. He had never considered it at all. Not only did he not do it, he did not even think about it. This was the gap, a gap that was hard to catch up. Thank you for letting me win. Jun Moxie smiled and did not bother with pleasantries, because he could clearly feel that Chu Chi-hun was very lacking in this aspect. A king of assassins, a supreme assassin, was not just capable of killing people. There was also a lot of knowledge in this. If there was an opportunity, he must make use of it to its fullest potential. Even if there was no opportunity, he must create an opportunity for himself. This was the most complete concept of an assassin. Such a concept was also suitable for any other industry, be it people of all religions or even officialdom, official career, marketing, or business. All of them were the same. Everyone had an opportunity. When there was no opportunity, the opportunity created by oneself would be more suitable for oneself. So, when there was no path in front of us, we must pave a path for ourselves if we want to move forward. The more there was no path, the more likely it was that we could create a golden path. When I get out of here alive, I will announce this news to the world. The Supreme Assassin is no longer Chu Chi-hun. Chu Chi-hun's voice was low, but it was from the bottom of his heart. My skills are not as good as others. If I still call myself the Supreme Assassin, it will be a disgrace to me. I do not need the recognition of the world, so you don't have to do this. Whether the world recognizes me or not, what does it have to do with me? Junimo Xie raised his head and smiled arrogantly. He said disdainfully, I only need your acknowledgement. That's enough. As Jun Moxie spoke, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He thought with some relief, I, the evil monarch, did not lose our face after all. Thinking of this, his heart turned sour. What does the world have to do with me? You have really won my heart. Chu Chi-hun was startled, and then he suddenly laughed. Then he looked at the 3 of them and said in a deep voice, Until now, I still haven't asked for your names. The 3 of them were stunned when they heard this. They had thought that Chu Chi-hun had already known their identities. They didn't expect that he really didn't know. This was Chu Chi-hun's strange temper. He had never made friends with anyone in his life, so he would never ask for someone's name. Before this, the only thing he remembered was the name of his assassination target. Chu Chi-hun had always thought that there was no one in the world who was worthy of him asking for his name, and no one was qualified to be his friend. No one was qualified to be his friend. It was the first time for this killer to ask for someone's name. It was the first time for a typical young lady to get on a bridal sedan chair. My name is Jun Moxie. This is my mother, Dongfang Wenxin. This is my wife. May I won't tell your full name. Jun Moxie beamed with delight, taking advantage of them again. You are Jun Moxie. You are Dongfang Wenxin. Chu Chi-hun was shocked and suddenly asked, Are you the widow of General Junwoo Hui? The Dongfang family's Miss Wenxin? Yes, I am. Dongfang Wenxin's eyes turned red, but she forced herself to be calm and said, I have lived for so long, but I have brought shame to my late husband's name. Please don't laugh at me, Senior Chu. Suddenly hearing her husband's name from someone else's mouth, that familiar feeling suddenly made Dongfang Wenxin's heart sour, and she couldn't control herself. What are you talking about, madam? Chu Chuan's face became serious. Although General Jun is my junior, he is a hero, courageous, and chivalrous. I am a cold-blooded killer, and I have never been convinced by anyone, but Jun Wu Hui is the only exception. Madam's love for her husband is earth-shattering, and she is willing to sleep with heaven and earth for her husband, which should be admired by the world. It also makes those women who are greedy for wealth and enjoyment feel ashamed. The heroic husband and wife complement each other, so how can they be ashamed? Chu Chihuan let out a long sigh and said, That year, I had the honor of meeting General Jun because someone offered me 30 million taels of silver to assassinate Jun Wu Hui. After I investigated, the more I admired him, and finally, I gave up on the deal. That was also the first and only time in my life that I gave up on my own initiative. He laughed bitterly. Chu Chuan, have always been a cold-blooded butcher, and I never cared whether the other party was a loyal minister or a virtuous wife. As long as someone could afford it, I would never be soft-hearted. But that time, I was really convinced by Jun Wu Hui. I once sneaked into the army camp and watched him for 3 days before I left. On behalf of my late husband, I thank Mr. Chu for his mercy. Dongfang Wenxin stood up and bowed. Who was the person who asked you to kill my father? Can you give me a name? Jun Moxie frowned, but he was concerned about this question. This matter had been picked out one by one, but the more he investigated, the more complicated it became. The buyer that day was the imperial tutor of the Yutang Empire, Fei Mengchen. Chu Chihuan hesitated for a while. I did not accept his request, so he is not my client. So, it is not a big deal for me to tell you. Although he said that, Jun Moxie understood that it was a taboo for an assassin to tell his client. Although Chu Chihuan said so, he had already owed him a big favor. Chu Chihuan, I was thinking about your movement skills. There is something wrong with your movement skills. Mei Xuyan looked at Chu Chihuan quietly, and her eyebrows were slightly furrowed. She looked at Chu Chihuan suspiciously, and her eyes were filled with hatred. Do you know about the war for seizing the heavens? Venerable Mei indeed has a good eye. How could Chu Chihuan not know who this beauty was? When she fought against more than 30 experts alone, Chu Chihuan had seen it with his own eyes, so he did not dare to neglect her. My teacher was fortunate enough to fight on the Pillar of Heaven's peak and fell down the cliff with heavy injuries. Luckily, he did not die, but his Xian cultivation was half crippled, and his body was also crippled. After a lot of hard work, he took a long time to recover. Finally, he accepted me as his disciple by chance. A pained smile appeared on Chu Chihuan's face. He lowered his head and said slowly, Although my teacher's Xian cultivation could not advance any further, he knew how to take care of his health, so his lifespan was not in danger. Although he could no longer practice Xian cultivation, he had developed an interest in the strange race's movement skills. Chu Chihuan sighed deeply and said, My teacher once said that the strange race's biggest threat to us is their strange movement skills, because they can hide themselves at any time, and it is hard to see them with the naked eye. Countless experts with higher cultivation than them have suffered from their strange movement skills. My teacher was the same. So my teacher spent the last few hundred years of his life trying to find a way to break that strange movement skill. Your teacher is a wise man. I wonder if he has found a way to deal with it. Mei Xuyan's eyes lit up, and she asked hurriedly. Now, the monthly votes have been pulled apart by tens of votes. Brothers, sisters, can you still fight? Can you still fight? Can you still fight? I have not fallen yet. I am still fighting, still exploding. I hope you can use your monthly votes to tell me. Chapter 628. Unsolvable. Chu Chuan sighed and said, My teacher had pondered for over 100 years, but he still could not solve it. Although he was unable to solve it, it was not without any gains. My teacher studied the strange movement techniques of the strange races and combined them with many of the Xian continent's movement techniques. Finally, he came up with a unique set of mental cultivation techniques. This set of mental cultivation techniques, combined with movement techniques, actually has the same effect as the strange race's stealth assassination technique. And what I'm using now is precisely this set of movement techniques. Venerable May said that it has something to do with the war for seizing the heavens, and he is not wrong. Because this set of movement techniques originated from the strange race's stealth assassination technique. So that's how it is. Mei Xuan let out a long breath, and her expression calmed down as she said, "Your teacher is really a respectable senior. He is crippled, but not crippled, and is still able to benefit his descendants." Just as the few of them were chatting excitedly, a bright light suddenly flashed above their heads. About 100 zhang above ground, a pile of snow that was tens of zhang high had been lifted up, revealing a man-made cave entrance. The four of them were shocked, and Chu Chihuan even stood up with a schwa sound. Don't be anxious. They won't be able to come down. If they dare to come down, that would be even more fun." June Moxie snorted and said, "I didn't think that there would be a few people with brains this time. What a surprise. But do you think that this is all?" June Daxiao laughed, and a milky white mist suddenly rose from his body. He shouted, "Dive!" Under the shocked gazes of Chu Chihuan and Dongfang, the ground beneath their feet suddenly dropped downwards. This time, it was different from the previous time. The last time June Mo Xie had fallen, he had only wanted to find a place to hide. But now, he was discovered even though he was more than 100 feet underground. June Mo Xie was a little angry. Therefore, this time, it was a long fall of several hundred feet. For a moment, even Chu Chihuan felt like he was dreaming. Mei Shuyan had already carried Dongfang Wenxin up when she was falling, so that her feet were off the ground. Chu Chihuan had thought that the whole of the four of them were hiding and was actually prepared by June Moxie long ago. Only now did he realize that it was not the case at all. It was a last-minute creation. When he thought of how June Moxie could sneak in as he pleased and had no limits to his terrifying methods, this shocking fact caused this supreme assassin's mind to be thrown into chaos. There was actually such a miraculous technique in this world. Great divine ability? I'm afraid the people who have come this time are not to be underestimated. We might not be able to deal with them easily. I'm afraid there will be a huge battle soon. June Moxie controlled the momentum of his descent and said to Mei Shuyan cautiously, "There are two especially powerful auras above us. Even compared to you, they're not much weaker. But no matter what, don't make a move. Protecting Mother is your only mission. Leave everything else to us. Those are venerable realm cultivators. Can you two handle them?" Mei Shuyan stared at him and said, "Don't force yourself. If I make a move, I'm sure we will have a higher chance of winning. Don't worry. In this environment, even if the golden deities of the great all-embracing heaven come down, they will all die." June Moxie said fiercely, "That's right. Speaking of sneak attacks, those who are better than us in this world are probably still in their mother's wombs." Chu Chihuan laughed and said confidently, "During this period of time, June Moxie had helped him to recuperate his body. This allowed his Xin, Qi, and body to recover to their best condition. This was the time when he was bursting with confidence. In the dark underground cave, the two king of assassins were ready to strike. But looking down from above, there was only endless darkness. There was no movement at all. What should we do now? Zi Jinghong stuck his head out to look at this dark and bottomless cave. He could only feel that there was a faint, ghostly aura coming out of it, and he felt a little apprehensive. She felt a little nervous and suggested, "Why don't we just fill up this big cave and suffocate them to death? That will save us a lot of trouble." Hee, faction leader Z. How do you know that there are no other forks in this cave? Or maybe there's a whole other cave. Or maybe this is an exit to the outside of the slanting valley? Fill it up? This suggestion of yours really makes this old man smile. Zhen Bei laughed as he looked at Zi Jinghong and said in an amiable manner. Zi Jinghong's face turned red, and he was so embarrassed that he couldn't say anything. Send people down to check. Send 2 groups at the same time. The first group of 3 people will form a triangular formation. The second group of 5 people will form a circle. The 2 groups of people will be separated by 5 zhang. They will guard each other from top to bottom. This way, we can ensure our safety. Du Ju ordered Ling Ling. Zhen Sibei smiled amiably and said, That's right. City Lord Du's suggestion is very good. This way, we can avoid a lot of casualties. This time, for the sake of mutual understanding, every group of people should come from the same place. Otherwise, we won't be able to bear another tragedy like Ma Jiangming and the Ruan brothers. Palace Lord Zi, don't you think so? Zi Jinghong said indifferently. Second Master's words are reasonable. Since that's the case, I ask Second Master to deploy the people. Zi Jinghong was well aware of Du Ju and Zhen Sibei's intentions. These 2 old geezers wanted the people of the illusory ocean of blood to be the first batch of cannon fodder. Therefore, Zi Jinghong wisely withdrew from the decision-making group and threw the problem back to Zhen Sibei. You're the one giving the orders. You cannot send your own people, right? How can you convince the people if you still send people from other sects? Very well. This old man has lived for a few more years here. In that case, this old man will be thick-skinned. A sharp light flashed in Zhen Sibei's eyes. He laughed and said, The people of the illusory ocean of blood live in the fog of the blood sea all year round. So, they should be more familiar with this kind of dark environment. I suggest that the illusory ocean of blood send out 3 people first. What do you think? Brother Du, do you have a different opinion? Du Ju rolled his eyes and said with a fake smile, That's right, Brother Zhen's words make a lot of sense. The Blood Sea is indeed the most suitable for the first wave of search. As for the second wave, it would be a grand and majestic formation. In this aspect, our Supreme Golden City is far inferior to the elusive world of immortals. As for the second wave, let the people of the Immortal Palace do it. I'll wait here and wait for the good news. Naturally, if there's a need for the third wave, our great Golden City will not shirk. Zi Jinghong secretly cursed in her heart. Shameless. This is too shameless. These 2 old geezers schemed and schemed. They didn't care about their reputation at all. They wanted the people of the illusory ocean of blood to be cannon fodder first. It seemed that the 2 holy lands had already given birth to the idea of preserving their own strength after the recent losses. After all, the losses of any of the 3 clans were not small. Almost 100 people from the 3 holy lands were stuffed into this bottomless pit. Zhen Bei was also extremely unhappy at this moment. He hadn't expected that Du Ju would take advantage of the situation to make a fool out of him. He had originally planned to stay behind to take advantage of the situation, but he was still pushed into the second wave. Although he wasn't the most direct cannon fodder, there was still quite a bit of risk involved. Both of them were cursing in their hearts. Damn it. With the 2 of us probing, why would there be a need for the third wave? Du Ju's words of duty-bound were simply a bunch of high-sounding **T. Wasn't he cursing all of us to die? Go down. Zhen Sibei ordered in a low voice. If there's an accident, give a long whistle to warn. Zi Jinghong nodded and pointed out 3 superior supreme experts from the illusory blood sea to step forward. The 3 of them had always been inseparable and had excellent teamwork. Moreover, their cultivation level was considered to be among the top in the illusory blood sea. Even if it was disadvantageous for them to go down, they wouldn't be killed without a chance to fight back. At least they could hold on until the Hermitage people came down. Stop every 10 feet and leave a mark. Make the stairway to heaven. Du Ju added another order. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the 3 illusory blood sea experts leaped up at the same time, forming an equilateral triangle in midair and suddenly landed. The position where they landed was close to the wall of the cave. The long swords in one hand shone brightly, and the other hand was placed horizontally in front of their chest, accumulating a mysterious palm force, ready to attack or push against the wall at any time. Behind them, 5 white-robed men from the hermitage stood up and followed closely behind, jumping down. This time, all the people who went down were superior supreme experts. The 8 of them maintained the same movement, rising and falling at the same time. At the same time, they stopped their bodies on the wall of the cave and slowly descended at almost the same frequency. At the bottom of the cave, Emocia, the opponents are so powerful, we can't fight them recklessly. Mei Shuiyan frowned and said anxiously, "Let's leave first. As the saying goes, revenge is a dish best served cold." I heard what was said just now. The people who spoke were the second in command of the hermitage, the compassionate, venerable Zhen Sibei, and the third in command of the supreme Golden City, the heartless, venerable Du Ju. These 2 people are at the same level as me. Moreover, there are more than 100 experts. Emocia, for the sake of your mother, bear with it for a moment and leave. I know you must have other ways to escape. Jun Moxie was stunned. He looked at the 8 people who were slowly descending, gritted his teeth, and said, "All right, you guys follow me closely." Jun Moxie waved his hand, and a dark hole suddenly appeared at the side of the cave. The 4 of them quickly went in, and the hole closed instantly. There was no sound, no trace. But when Jun Moxie went in last, a ruthless look flashed in his eyes. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the 3 experts from the Blood Sea reached the bottom of the cave. What surprised them was that there was no water at such a deep place, and it was very dry. Also, there was no one down there. Looking up, the gray sky was only the size of teacup. Roughly estimating, this cave was at least 500 feet deep. Wait, no one. How could there be no one? Where did they go? The few of them carefully knocked on the walls of the cave. It was all solid ground, and there were even some hard rocks. Not to mention humans, even a mouse would find it hard to go through. This was really strange. The 3 of them looked at each other, and just at this time, Jun Mo Xie, who had already burrowed into the ground, suddenly turned around. A cruel light flashed in his eyes, and he clasped his hands together, assuming a strange posture. Suddenly, his body emitted a blurry yellow light. The power of Earth. Chapter 629. Third Watch. While the 3 from Illusory Ocean of Blood were in a daze, the 5 from Hermitage came down one after another. One of them couldn't help but ask, "Why isn't anyone here? Have you searched the surroundings?" Obviously, he was also very surprised. No one. How strange. Why is there no one? An expert of the blood, C scratched his head in puzzlement. It seemed that he had not scratched his head since he had mastered the mysterious art. But now he had picked up his childhood habit again. The 8 of them knocked and checked, and came to the same conclusion. This was a straight hollow, surrounded by solid walls made of thick soil and rocks. There was absolutely no other fork in the cave. It was even more impossible for the ground to be under his feet. That solid feeling clearly told everyone this fact. What a waste of time. The whole way down 500 feet, I was scared out of my wits. But in the end, I didn't find anyone. One of them laughed at himself and said, "Since there is no one, then we should hurry up. It's so dark here. Why do I feel like there's something wrong everywhere?" Since there was no one around, what was the point of staying here? This place was at least 500 feet underground. It was not a good place to be. Just as they were at a loss, one of them suddenly jumped up and shouted, "Everyone, look! Oh my God!" The other 7 didn't expect that this guy would be so ungentlemanly as to call out to the heavens. They couldn't help but laugh. Just as they were about to mock him, the 7 of them suddenly cried out in alarm. Damn it! Why is there so much water suddenly? It turned out that water was gushing out from the ground like a spring. It was cool and refreshing. In the blink of an eye, the water had already reached their ankles. Just now, everyone had clearly checked that the dryness of the ground was already at its limit. It was not much different from the dryness of the brick kiln walls. But why would there be water suddenly? However, now was not a good time to feel cool, nor was it a good time to think about the root of the problem. Water coming out of the bottom of the cave meant that this cave was about to collapse. Moreover, this was 500 feet below the surface of the ground. Once it collapsed, the 8 of them were shocked at the same time. They quickly jumped up and climbed up the stone wall. They climbed up as if they were flying. With the strength of these 8 people, they had a good chance of escaping if there were no accidents. The water level on the ground couldn't rise so fast. But suddenly, the wall above them started to shake violently for no reason. The 8 of them felt darkness in front of them. They cried out in unison, "This is bad." Large chunks of soil came crashing down in an instant, and there were also huge rocks in the middle. This was 500 feet underground. The 8 of them were scared out of their wits. They tried their best to rush up, but with a loud bang, they couldn't see anything in the darkness. The entire wall of the cave collapsed at the same time. A total of 8 superior supreme experts were actually buried alive in the cave. Above, Zhan Ci Bei and the rest were waiting for the good news. However, as they waited, they suddenly felt a tremor beneath their feet. Du Ju was the first to react. He leaped up and the rest jumped out of the cave. At the same time, the cave collapsed with a loud crash. Mud and stones from all directions were squeezed into the middle at the same time. In an instant, this square hole was completely blocked. Zhan Cibei and Zi Jinghong cursed at the same time. F***CK? This is actually a trap. At this moment, Zhan Cibei's benevolent face was completely gone. He became ferocious and terrifying, as if he wanted to eat someone. He cursed in exasperation. King Chu Chi-huan, your whole family is a bunch of bastards. How could you come up with such a dirty trick? F***CK, your ancestors. A benevolent and amiable old man suddenly started cursing like a shrew. What kind of feeling was that? How magnificent would it be? I don't know, but the experts of the 3 holy lands must have felt it in their hearts. All of them were as silent as cicadas in winter as they watched this white-bearded, compassionate, and merciful Supreme Master stomping his feet and cursing incessantly. He was cursing even more viciously than the fat woman who had her pants ripped open when she tripped in front of my house on a hot day. Zhan Cibei couldn't help but be angry and shocked. Just as a precaution, he had sent out 5 superior supreme experts who were almost at the peak of their strength. Those were all top-notch experts who were only a step away from becoming venerable ones. If they were really lost here, the consequences would be unimaginable. So serious that even he couldn't bear it. And this plan was suggested by him. He had vetoed Zi Jinghong's correct suggestion. Zi Jinghong was also cursing with a red face. His heart was filled with grief, but there was also a faint sense of pleasure. F***CK, your grandmother. Who asked you to set me up again? Look at you now. I only managed to bury 3 of my men, but you lost 5 of your men in one go. 2 more than my blood sea. And all of them were peak experts. F***CKU, if not for my men down there, I would have secretly gone to one side to enjoy myself. Du Ju grinned, his facial muscles twitching. There was a hint of schadenfreude in his eyes, but he said sympathetically, "So, this place was actually a trap? I really didn't expect. The 2 of you, my condolences. After all, the dead can't be brought back to life. The Xian continent is full of talents, and it's still possible to gather a few more experts." Du Ju's mischievous words made Zhen Cibei and Zi Jinghong so angry that 1 Buddha was born, 2 Buddhas ascended to heaven, and 3 Buddhas nirvana. Was this still considered human speech? They were only buried alive. They weren't dead yet, and you're already asking for their condolences? Wasn't this a curse? Men, dig up this hole as fast as you can. Quickly. Zhan Cibei's face was filled with anger. He placed his hands on his hips and shouted fiercely. On the other side, Zi Jinghong hurriedly gave the same order. Underground, in a certain direction, Jun Moxie closed his eyes and clasped his hands together. Suddenly, he spread his arms outwards, and circles of yellow light rippled out from his body. In an instant, it merged with the surrounding soil and continued to spread out in a direction that was difficult to see with the naked eye. On Jun Moxie's body, circles of yellow light continued to emit rapidly and endlessly. I want to make this place collapse. Finally, Jun Moxie's face paled. He opened his eyes, and a bloody light flashed in his eyes. He roared loudly, and an infinite amount of yellow light burst out. His body fell backwards in exhaustion, and he said hurriedly, "Quickly leave. Leave this place, the faster the better." Chu Chihuan grabbed his body and rushed forward like a sharp sword through a dark tunnel. Mei Shuyan followed closely behind and disappeared in the blink of an eye on the surface, just as the three Holy Lands were about to start digging to rescue people. An expert had just lifted up a large piece of soil. Suddenly, everyone felt the ground beneath their feet tremble. The ground beneath their feet shook merrily, as if it was dancing. This time, the tremor was much stronger than the previous one. Even the stones on the ground were bounced high up into the air. Everyone felt that they couldn't even stand properly. Duju raised his head to look, and his face changed greatly. With a schwa sound, his face turned pale. He shouted, "F***CK? This place is going to collapse. How can there be a landslide? Everyone quickly leave." With a whoosh sound, he moved like an arrow leaving the bow. The experts of the Supreme Golden City shouted and followed him. "Don't go. We haven't rescued the people yet. No one is allowed to." Zhang Sibei was so angry that he almost vomited blood. But he couldn't help but stare blankly, and immediately shut his mouth. The two mountain peaks on both sides of the slanting valley shook at the same time. First, the snow on the mountain peaks rumbled and fell down with the momentum of 10,000 horses galloping. But it wasn't over yet. The mountain peaks continued to shake, and suddenly, like a drunkard, they fell down. The two steep mountain peaks collapsed with a loud bang, one to the left and one to the right, smashing down towards the center of the valley. Countless thousands of kilogram boulders rolled down from the top of the mountain with a mighty momentum. It was as if a 10,000 zhang dike had suddenly been breached. Moreover, from the top to the bottom, it directly formed the idiom Mount Tai crushing down. Zhang Sibei's eyes widened as he roared, "Quickly run." Even his voice had changed pitch. Nearly 100 experts scattered like birds and beasts, but after all, they weren't as quick as Duju. In the end, many people were drowned in screaming and screaming. They could only use their own xian qi to resist. The rumbling sounds of the earth cracking and the mountain collapsing continued for the time it took to drink a cup of tea. At this time, looking at the valley again, it was already the same as the two mountain peaks on both sides. It was a flat land. Originally, it was called a valley because the two mountain peaks were sandwiched by a ravine. But now, it had become a flat land. In an instant, the blue sea turned into mulberry fields. This was how it was. The experts of the three holy lands were all panting heavily as they stood on the newly excavated plains. Their eyes were wide open as they stared at the inconceivable scene before them. They could only feel chills running down their backs as cold sweat trickled down their backs. All of their faces were pale, and their faces were completely drained of blood. Who could resist such a divine power of heaven and earth? Below, groans could be heard from time to time, and huge boulders were slowly being pushed away. It had to be said that the bones of these superior supreme experts were really tough. Such a large-scale landslide actually didn't smash them to death. But each and every one of them was also injured. Their bodies and faces were covered in bruises and bruises. This was not the kind of place for marriage. There was complete silence. Suddenly, save them all. "You bunch of bastards. Are you all King blockheads?" Zhang Sibei hammered his chest and roared in anger. "If this daddy doesn't speak, are you all going to just watch them struggle for their lives? A bunch of living trash. CK your grannies." Just as he finished scolding, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and anger. His eyes were blood red. After a full 7 days, this place could finally be considered tidied up. A total of 152 people from the three holy lands had gathered here. Of the 17 people who were injured by the landslide, 2 had broken legs, and 3 had broken arms. The rest were also injured, and luckily, no one died. It was all thanks to this bunch of old bones that were really tough. Hundreds of years of xian qi, they were really not to be trifled with. Chapter 630. In the end, These people were forced to drink muddy water to maintain their breathing. After all, there was still oxygen in the water. Even the purest Xian Qi cultivation couldn't last for 7 days and 7 nights without breathing. When they were dug out, 7 of them were left with their last breaths. They had fallen into a deep coma, and each of them had multiple fractures on their bodies. They didn't even have the strength to move their eyes. The last person had been dead for a long time. His body had been bitten into pieces, and there wasn't even a single piece of flesh left. Everyone lowered their heads in misery when they saw this tragic scene. It was obvious that there wasn't anything to eat underground. So, the unlucky guy who had died first had become food for everyone else. After a few days, these people had finally recovered a little. The first thing they did after waking up was to vomit nonstop. Moreover, they had committed a mental illness from then on, eating the flesh and blood of their own brothers. What kind of feeling is this? This kind of horrifying feeling was enough to make these people remember it until the end of time. Jun Moxie had exhausted his spiritual power to trigger the landslide. After he came out, he had practically relied on Chu Chihuan to carry him all the way. But even so, Chu Chihuan was still very happy. When he saw that place suddenly collapse, it was as comfortable as jumping into a frozen river on a hot day. When he saw 2 mountain peaks collapse at the same time, Chu Chihuan even forgot to be shocked. At that moment, he only wanted to sing. It was too cool, too King cool. Who asked you to chase after me indiscriminately and try to kill me? Now, I'm suffering from retribution, right? Just based on this point alone, not to mention carrying Jun Mo Xie for a short period of time. Even if he had to carry Jun Mo Xie for a lifetime, he would be willing. More than 10 days passed, and the road could be said to be extremely peaceful. The city walls of Tianxiang City could be faintly seen in front of them. Jun Moxie's spiritual power had already been restored, but he was still clinging to Chu Chihuan's back and wouldn't come down no matter what. Damn it! Once I come down, this guy will turn around and run away. Who can I look for? However, Chu Chihuan was still Chu Chihuan. Even though Jun Moxie had shown great sincerity, he still only stayed at the Jun residence for 2 days and then left. He was like a lonely wolf who would never have too much time to rest. Perhaps those days of wandering and those thrilling moments were what Chu Chihuan was really pursuing. I'm originally a rootless duckweed. I'm used to this kind of life, and I don't want to have roots. We are fated to meet today, but we may not be able to meet again in the future. Before leaving, Chu Chihuan had a long talk with Jun Moxie and said, "We are all real killers, and we know our hearts. My identity will always be a killer, and this will never change. I like these days, and I like the feeling of wandering everywhere. I go. I like it. So I'm leaving. I'm very happy that I have the fate to meet you, the king of killers. But it's a pity that your identity means that you can't be a real killer. So, although your strength can be said to be the king of our profession, and no one has the right to object, you have to remember your identity. You are not a killer. I am. So, I'm very sorry for my departure. I know what you want. I have a disciple, and I will arrange for him to find you later. I believe you should have an impression of him, because he tried to assassinate you before. I hope you can forget about it and treat him well. Although I'm just a killer, I'm also a teacher. As for the 3 Holy Lands pursuit, I don't really care, because I'm being hunted every day. It's just that the starting point of this pursuit is slightly higher. Maybe this time, it will be difficult for me to escape the 3 Holy Lands pursuit. But hiding and running away is not my Chu Chihuan style. I'm the king of killers. Even if I have to die, I should be killed by others and not die peacefully of old age. I'd rather be stained with blood than live an ignoble life. This is my pride, and I believe you understand. If I'm lucky enough to survive and feel tired, I think I'll come here to rest for a while, and then I'll start my journey again." These were Chu Chihuan's words. Jun Moxie understood and admired him, and even envied him. Crossing the world with a sword, repaying kindness and enmity, brushing the clothes, sweeping the world with a sword, traveling thousands of miles, lonely soared against the morning wind, dreaming of the ocean laughing, waking up with blood-red clothes. Gratitude and enmity must be unsheathed. Life and death have nothing to do with feelings. Tender heart lingers on the sea. Loyal heart illuminates the sea. I'll be free and unfettered. Heaven and earth leave no trace. The cold moon follows the lonely shadow. Withered branches sweep the cold wind. This was Jun Moxie's dream life. But in this life, his identity meant that this dream could never be realized. And what Chu Chihuan said was right. Although he was the king of killers, he could not appear as a killer. Killer, this long-lost title, only belonged to his previous life. In this life, he was Jun Moxie. The battle with Chu Chihuan and winning the glory of the king of killers had already proved that he was the evil monarch. But it was just a proof, although it was enough. So, Jun Moxie did not ask Chu Chihuan to stay. Or, from another point of view, Chu Chihuan's wandering in the Jianghu seemed to have continued Jun Moxie's dream of being a killer in the Jianghu. Being able to have someone who had the same dream as him and live like this could be considered as fulfilling his dream. Before Chu Chihuan left, Jun Moxie gave him 3 elixirs: Vitality Linkage Elixir, Vitality Gathering Elixir, and Heaven Vitality Elixir. Then, he gave Chu Chihuan 2 bottles of elixirs that he had carefully refined. One bottle was for internal injuries, which could recover even the most serious internal injuries in a short time. Even if it was a disease that could not be cured by medicine like qi deviation, it could alleviate and regulate it. The other bottle was for knife wounds, which had a magical effect on external injuries and could almost bring the dead back to life. After knowing the uses of these 3 elixirs and the 2 bottles of medicine for internal and external injuries, Chu Chihuan did not speak for a long time. There was no joy on his face. Instead, it was full of disappointment, which was actually a kind of powerless struggle. I, Chu Chihuan, have never owed anyone a favor in my life. This has always been my proudest point, and also the biggest foundation of my straightforwardness. But your gift this time is too heavy for me to bear. But I know that it is difficult for me to refuse, and I don't want to refuse. I owe you a lot. I owe you a life for the Blizzard Tavern. I owe you a favor for the ambush in the Slanting Valley. I owe you a favor for the 1,000-mile escape. And now, I owe you so many elixirs. I am very unhappy. If there is a chance, I will repay this favor. But the debt of a favor is the most difficult to repay. I am afraid that I will never be able to repay it in this lifetime. So, I never owe you anything. Chu Chihuan left. He floated away in a carefree and unrestrained manner. He left without any worries and didn't even look back. Resolute and unrestrained. He only left a few words. After saying this, he turned around and left and didn't look back again. The day that you wield your sword in the snowstorm will be the day that I draw my sword in the Silver City. These 3 bottles of elixirs, I will take them as my reward. Although you may not think so, but I have never owed anyone anything, and I don't want to owe you anything. Jun Moxie was silent. After Chu Chihuan left, Mei Shuyan also bade farewell to Jun Moxie. She wanted to cooperate with the Snake King to return to Tian Fa and prepare for the upcoming battle. Similarly, when Mei Shuyan returned again, it would be the time for everyone to lead the army to Blizzard's Silver City. If there were no accidents, the 3 Holy Lands would also intervene in the Battle of Blizzard Silver City. So, when Mei Shuyan returned this time, she was going to mobilize the army. She left with Jun Moxie's many elixirs. When she returned again, it would be a brand new Tian Fa. Tian Fa's glory days were just around the corner. No matter who obstructed my path of vengeance, no matter who it is, I will crush them without mercy. With absolute strength, I will destroy them in one battle. This time, I will wield my sword in the Silver City, not only for vengeance, but also for intimidation. Because Jun Moxie not only wanted to kill the Shao family, he also wanted to collapse the snowy peak of the sword. He must create a shocking sensation to shock the entire Xian continent. Revenge for the June family. Revenge for my father. Revenge for my mother. Revenge for my uncle. Revenge for my brother. More importantly, I will use this opportunity to remove the shackles of the oath of the Dongfang family. With the Xiao family as a stepping stone, I will announce to the world that the Jun family is rising. The rise of Jun Moxie. No one can stop me. Absolutely no one can stop me. At that moment, the path of glory of the otherworldly evil monarch will truly begin. When Mei Shuyan left, her eyes were full of reluctance. Finally, after a gentle hug, she floated away. The Qian Sun Serpent Queen's eyes were red, as if she had been crying. When she left, she did not even look at Jun Moxie. No one knew if it was because she did not dare to look, or if it was something else. The return of Dongfang Wenxin brought great joy to the Jun family. When he saw his brother-in-law, Jun Wui, whose face was full of shame, Dongfang Wenxin said, "Third brother, you don't need to be ashamed, and you don't need to blame yourself too much. Not to mention that you are not at fault in this matter. Even if you're at fault, so what? Brothers are one. If this happened to me and Wu Hui, then the innocent one who would suffer would be you, and we would also be sad. You only need to think of the whole thing from your brother's point of view, and you will understand what your brother means. You will always be our most beloved little brother. If you really feel sorry for your brother, then live with dignity and live proudly for your brother." Jun Wui held back his tears and went back with red eyes. This proud and unyielding blood general knelt in front of Jun Wu Hui and Jun Wuming's memorial tablets for the whole night, his head covered with frost. But now, the knot in his heart was finally undone. Dongfang Wenxin was also very satisfied with the two daughters-in-law, Guan Qinghan and Duga Xiaoi. Guan Qinghan's strength and her temperament, which was like a plum blossom in the snow, made Dongfang Wenxin admire her greatly. He especially admired Guan Qinghan's persistence, stubbornness, and aloofness, which made Dongfang Wenxin feel like he saw himself in the past. Also, Guan Qinghan's music and calligraphy were extraordinary, and she had a lot in common with Dongfang Wenxin. So when the two of them were together, they complemented each other. Chapter 631. After Chu Chihuan left, Jun Moxie waited for Chu Chihuan's disciple. He was looking forward to it. Ever since he came to this world, he had only encountered one assassination attempt, and it was that lightning-like strike outside the imperial city. Since then, there had been no news or traces of that assassin. He had completely disappeared, as if he did not exist in this world. Even if Jun Moxie wanted to investigate, he had no way of finding out. However, there had always been a doubt in his heart. Only now did he know that he was actually Chu Chihuan's disciple. Thinking of that fellow's extremely fast movement and sword skills, Jun Moxie had a feeling that if this fellow was trained well, his future achievements would definitely be higher than Chu Chihuan's. So Jun Moxie was really looking forward to it. In the short term, there was nothing else to do. Right now, the main goal was to train the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer. Under Jun Moxie's relentless use of medicinal pills and spirit medicines, and under the torturous training of Solitary Eagle and Feng Wanyun, the strength of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer soared like a rocket. 300 people continuously jumped levels, and many of them had already reached the peak of Earth Xian. Just one more step, and they would be able to take the 3 great medicinal pills of Jun Moxie and soar again. At that time, the strength of the Jun family could only be described as terrifying. Everything was ready. Originally, using this kind of extremely cruel method to increase one's strength and push one's potential to the limit was not the right way. In essence, it was basically an act of drinking poison to quench one's thirst. The members of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer might be able to greatly increase their strength in a short period of time, but there was no room for further growth. In fact, because of this extreme training, their lifespan would be greatly depleted, and they could die at any time. However, Jun Moxie had an endless supply of prescriptions and heavenly treasures in his hands, so they didn't have to worry about such things at all. With enough elixirs as a foundation, and with some recuperation It would only take a few days at most to replenish all the vitality they had lost, and they could even grow a lot. As a result, all the members gradually got used to this extremely cruel training cycle. Other than the harsh training of the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer, the June family was very peaceful and even warm. In the following days, June Moxie tried his best to relax and enjoy this peaceful life to the fullest. He was reluctant to part with these unforgettable days, because once war broke out once more, then such peaceful days would probably be difficult to find in the future. All the information came flying like snowflakes, conveying the same message. They had not found the location of the Bloodsword Hall. The Bloodsword Hall, the most terrifying assassin organization of the Xian continent, seemed to have disappeared from this world in a single night, without a trace. All the information about them could no longer be found. Not even the slightest trace could be found. For a terrorist organization with such an illustrious reputation, this phenomenon was extremely unreasonable. However, June Moxie didn't think that there was anything unreasonable about it. The June family had risen so powerfully, and the enemy was also a very bold person. How could they not cut off their losses? If they were still able to find traces of the Bloodsword Hall, then that would be really unreasonable. In these days, June Moxie often climbed up the tower, and at night, he would stare in the direction of the Imperial Palace for a long time. June Moxie was very clear that the man in the Imperial Palace definitely knew everything that had happened here. There were many times when June Moxie almost wanted to directly rush into the Imperial Palace, capture that man, and then use hypnosis to force him to tell the truth. However, June Moxie wasn't willing to do that. It wasn't that he couldn't, but if he were to obtain the truth like this, then it would be too easy for him. The price of a June family's hatred was his cheap life. How could it be repaid? In this world, there are many things that are more painful than death, and I look forward to using the rest of my life to properly taste them. An excessively calm day was often the calm before the storm. On this day, June Moxie slowly walked through the pure white snow into the small courtyard where Guanqing Han lived alone. The white snow was flawless, and it looked like it was wrapped in silver. June Moxie was dressed in a light blue robe, and the snow-white fox fur collar contrasted with his handsome face, red lips, white teeth, sword-like eyebrows, and starry eyes. His figure was tall and slender, and his handsomeness was pressing. He was the standard of a handsome and elegant young man. Naturally, it would be even more perfect if there wasn't a touch of evil between his eyebrows. June Dashao's footsteps were leisurely as he floated over, as if he was riding the wind and treading on the moon, his feet unstained by the dust. There were a total of 4 women sitting in a pavilion in the courtyard, and they couldn't help but stare at him as he walked in. Dongfang Wenxian's eyes flashed with pride. "This is my son. What an outstanding character." Dugu Xiaoi jumped up with a wow and said with a charming smile, "Brother Imo Xia, you are so handsome." Han Yinming turned her head, and her eyes also lit up, and she said in an old-fashioned manner, "Sister-in-law, this son of yours is not bad-looking." Her sister, Han Yinyao, and Jun Wui were in love with each other, so naturally her status rose, and she called Dongfang Wenxian's sister-in-law, just like Jun Wui. However, it was really ridiculous for a 16 or 17-year-old girl to speak in such a tone of seniority. Only Guanqing Han had her head lowered and her brows furrowed, as if she was thinking hard about something. She held a pen in her hand and was constantly drawing and writing. It seemed as if all her attention was focused on the white paper in front of her, and she didn't notice June Moxie's arrival at all. June Moxie walked over to take a look and saw that the white paper was filled with symbols. It turned out that Guanqing Han was composing a song. "What song is this?" June Moxie asked. Sister Qing Han has been spending a lot of time with Annie recently, and she often hears about Uncle and Annie's affairs. She was so touched by their affection that she vowed to compose a song to commemorate their sincere friendship. "I just finished it, and I played it once just now. It sounds very touching, but I still feel that something is wrong, so I changed it again." Dugu Xiao smiled mischievously. The little girl was dressed in a light yellow robe, a small leather cotton padded jacket, and a pair of small boots. There were 2 snow-white round pom-poms on them. She looked like the most delicate doll and was very lovable. "Oh, let me have a look." June Moxie walked over and stared at it. "You know music?" The 4 women looked at him in surprise, and their faces were full of surprise. "I only know a thing or two. It's not very elegant." June Moxie touched his nose and said modestly. Looking at Guan Qing Han's music score, he tried to hum it and shook his head and said, No, your song is too sad. Father and mother are chivalrous, and heroes and beauties complement each other. Although they are separated from each other, this true love will forever exist in the world, and no obstacles can stop it. It's a story of a generation, and it's not just a story of those silly men and women. Your music score may be able to make people cry, but it doesn't show the most beautiful true love, and it's difficult to arouse the greatest recognition of everyone. This can be said to be the biggest failure. Guan Qing Han said in a daze, "I also thought of this reason, and it's because I found this problem just now that I started to change it. But no matter how I changed, I always felt that I couldn't grasp the essence, and even felt that the more I changed, the worse it got." June Moxie looked up at the sky and thought for a while and said, "Let me try." As he said that, he put away Guan Qing Han's piece of white paper and laid down another one. He took the pen from Guan Qing Han's hand and stood in front of the table and was deep in thought like an old monk in meditation. Dongfang Wenqin couldn't help but laugh, thinking that her son was playing a trick, and looked at June Moxie with great interest. Du Xiaoyi and Han Yinming also looked like they were watching a good show, waiting for June Moxie to make a fool of himself, so that they could tease and humiliate him. But only Guan Qing Han knew that June Moxie knew music, and his attainment in it was quite high, and she was the only one who looked serious and expectant. After a long while, June Moxie let out a long breath, and suddenly moved the pen like it was flying. One by one, the musical symbols that belonged to this world appeared on the white paper, but what they brought was a melody from another world. There was no hesitation, and it was done in one go. Guan Qing Han took the song and tried to hum a few lines, and suddenly her eyes lit up, and she opened her eyes wide in disbelief, thinking carefully again. After what seemed like a long time, Guan Qing Han slowly took out a jade flute from her sleeves and put it to her lips. Her beautiful eyes stared at June Moxie's music score, and her mouth opened slightly, and the sound of the flute rang out. The sound of the flute was especially deep, and it was full of deep emotion. The song was full of the interpretation of true love, and also a strong sense of melancholy and helplessness, as well as the endless yearning for such a sincere love. This song was like a dream about love that everyone yearned for the most, an ethereal yet real dream. June Mo Xie silently closed his eyes. His right hand gently tapped the beat in response to the tune Guan Qing Han was playing. It seemed as if he was enjoying it. In fact, it seemed as if he was immersed in this once familiar music. Dongfang, when Xian and the other 2 suddenly heard such a beautiful music, and they were surprised at first, but then they couldn't help but immerse themselves in it. Such a beautiful and touching song had never appeared in this world. Even the most beautiful music had its end. When the song ended, Guan Qing Han stood there with the jade flute in her hand and looked at the composer, June Moxie, in disbelief. Although she knew that he was familiar with music, she still couldn't believe it, and even more couldn't believe that he could create such a heavenly sound so casually. "It's really beautiful." Du Xiaoyi opened her eyes and said with some nostalgia, "I've never heard such a soulful song before. If it could be sung with lyrics, it would definitely be very nice." June Mo Xie smiled faintly. He then picked up the brush and wrote the lyrics of the song under the score. He said, "This song, let's call it Song of No Regrets." He sighed in his heart. In this world, there is no 3 plays of Plum Blossom after all. The 4 surrounded him and slowly recited. "There are infatuated people in the world of mortals. Don't be too infatuated, if not for the bone-chilling cold, the fragrance of plum blossoms, What is love in the world? What is love in the world? How many stories in the world? The most ecstatic song of no regrets. There is one thing that I would like to ask of you. I don't want to see any comments or insults about other authors in my book review section. I hope you can calm down. Only writers know the hardships and tiredness of being a writer and how much effort they put in. Everyone works hard to make a living, and no one has it easy. I hope you can understand. I hope that the readers of Sejun can be as proud as our Sejun Moxie. I hope that one day, when you comment on us, you will say, the readers of Sejun are a group of people with good qualities. That will be my proudest thing. Chapter 632. Worldly Affairs, Infatuation. Dugu Xiaoyi sang the lyrics along with the music score. On the other side, Guan Qinghan's flute sounded again. Along with Dugu Xiaoyi's singing, the flute's gentle sound complemented each other. When the song ended, everyone could still feel the lingering sound. It was not an exaggeration to say that the melody lingered in the air for 3 days. What is love in the world? It makes people live and die for each other. Dongfang Wenxin suddenly shed tears and murmured, "What is love? What is love? Is love something that tortures people?" Jun Moxie sighed and recited slowly, "What is love in the world? It makes people live and die for each other. Two travelers from all over the world. Old wings fly back to winter and summer. Joy is fun. Parting is bitter, and there are infatuated children. You should have a saying, 10,000 miles of clouds, 1,000 mountains in the evening snow. Only shadow goes to whom?" When when Xin heard this poem, it was as if she had fallen into a trance. She chewed on every word, pondering over the meaning within. She stood there in a daze, and suddenly, her eyes filled with tears, slowly falling to the ground. She turned around and ran back to her room, only to hear a sorrowful cry. Jun Ying's words, 10,000 li of clouds, 1,000 mountains of snow at dusk. To whom does the shadow go? No regrets. No regrets. You want me to be alone? How am I going to face the wind and rain of the world? Xia, do you think Annie will she? Guan Qinghan asked Jun Moxie quietly. Her tone was full of worry and reproach. Obviously, she blamed Jun Moxie for making Dongfang Wenxin sad. Jun Xia sighed deeply and said, "Mother has been suppressing her grief and putting on a smile during this period of time. Forcing herself to smile is simply too tiring. If she keeps holding it in for too long, it will really cause problems. You know, emotions are like a torrent. It's better to let it flow than to block it. Might as well let her touch her heart and let it all out. As long as she can cry, it will be much easier after that." Guan Qinghan, Dugu Xiaoyi, and Han Yinming nodded in realization. Amidst the silence, a beautiful flute sound rose once again. It spread in all directions leisurely, and it did not stop. It was the song No Regrets, asking the world what is love. In a small courtyard separated by a wall, another infatuated person, Yi Guhan, stood under a flowering tree. He looked even more haggard than before. He let the snow on the flowering tree tremble and slide down his head and neck, but he seemed to not feel it all. He only listened to the song with infatuation. His empty left sleeve fluttered in the cold wind. Yi Guhan's face was bitter. His eyes were deep and filled with pain. His expression was bleak and lonely. He murmured, "Ask the world, what is love? Xiao, are you okay?" When Jun Moxie left, Guan Qinghan and Dugu Xiaoyi were studying the song. But Han Yinming followed him out. "Jun Moxie, nephew Xia, when do you plan to go to Blizzard Silver City?" Han Yinming pouted and looked at him. "Blizzard Silver City? What for?" Jun Moxie was stunned. "That place is far away and cold. I have no interest in going there." When he heard nephew Xia, Jun Dashao felt that it was a little harsh. But his mother and third uncle had already made the decision. He had no room to argue. How could he let this little girl bully him? "You." Han Yinming was angry. "What about the Xiao family? Don't you want to take revenge?" "Why would I want to? But the Xiao family is also the enemy of your Han family, and it's the kind of life and death enmity where only one of them dies. In terms of urgency, I'm definitely not the first to bear the brunt. Junimo spread out his hands and said, "It's not like you don't know that the Shao family is very powerful, and their influence is even more enormous. So, it's only natural that they leave it to you, who are equally strong, to deal with them. So, we'll wait for you to start fighting, and then we'll sneak over and bring your sister out to reunite with my third uncle. As for other matters, I'm really powerless. But our Blizzard Silver City will be completely destroyed." The little girl was so anxious that she almost cried. She bit her lips and looked at June Moxie. Then she stamped her feet and said, How can you be so heartless?" "I'm heartless? How did you come to that conclusion?" June Moxie felt wronged and said, "The so-called heartless is built on the basis of an intimate relationship, right? I don't seem to have much of a relationship with your Han family, right? Even from my third uncle's point of view, I should indeed go. But when I think about it carefully, I'm really unwilling. Let's not talk about anything else. Even if my father, second uncle, and my two brothers died that day, none of them had anything to do with your Blizzard Silver City. Even if the Shao family did it, your Han family wouldn't have known about it, right? At least you would have connived with it. From what standpoint are you saying that I'm heartless? It was indeed wrong of us to have connived with the Shao family. But shouldn't we be united against a common enemy? You're saying that you're not reconciled?" Han Yinming's eyes lit up. "You have conditions? If you have conditions, then tell me. How will I know if you don't tell me? How will I help you if I don't know? Tell me your conditions, and I'll know." June Moxie's face turned bitter. "Elder sister, don't beat around the bush. My head is already 3 times bigger than before. If it gets any bigger, it'll explode." Then June Dashao said with some reluctance, "I think you've already planned it. I'll go to the Blizzard Silver City and kill the Shao family. Then I'll help my third uncle get a wife. Then I'll help your Blizzard Silver City get rid of any future troubles. Third uncle and third aunt will be happy from then on. The Blizzard Silver City will flourish, and there won't be any internal troubles. Everyone will be happy. Is this your plan? You're an elder. You're really astute and farsighted. But what about me? You'll get everything. What'll I get in the end? I don't think I'll get anything. My third uncle will at least get a beauty. But I won't even get a single hair. Would you be willing to suffer such a loss? Then, how about I introduce a few sisters to you in the Blizzard Silver City? But whether you can succeed or not depends on your ability. That should be fine, right?" The little girl bit her lips and said in a resolute manner, No. What kind of condition is this? My third uncle married a princess of the Blizzard Silver City. You want to use a few maids to get rid of me? Isn't the gap too big?" June Moxie said indignantly. "No matter what, their status should be about the same, right? My third uncle married a princess, and I'm marrying a maid. Isn't this too degrading for me? About the same status?" Han Yiming opened her big round eyes and said in a confused manner, "But there's no more." "How come there's no more?" June Moxie frowned and pretended to be unhappy. Then he said patiently, "There's at least one more." "There's another one? Who?" The little girl frowned and thought hard for a while. She looked down at her toes and thought for a while. Then she looked up at the sky and thought for a while. She looked very pained and confused. Then she stretched out her 10 fingers and counted them one by one. After a long while, she finally said with certainty, "There's really no more. There's absolutely no more. I've counted several times. There's really no more? Are you sure?" June Moxie looked at her with some dissatisfaction. "You can't lie to me. This concerns the future of the Blizzard Silver City. I'm not lying. I'll be a puppy if I lie to you. There's really no more." The little girl pointed to the sky and swore, "I swear, if there's really a suitable person, if there's really a suitable one, you'll what? Don't tell me that you'll tie her up and send her to me?" June Moxie said in a very persuasive manner, "That's right. If there's really such a person, I'll tie her up and send her to you. I'll go all out for the future of the Blizzard Silver City. But what if there's really no more? The little Lolita spoke in a righteous manner. She had a triumphant expression on her face as she looked at June and Mo Xie proudly. In fact, it seemed as if her evil plan had succeeded. Then she chuckled and said, "If you really don't have them, then you should quickly go to the Silver City and help us kill those traitors." Good. It's a deal. If there's a suitable person in the Blizzard Silver City with the same status as your sister, then tie her up and send her to me to be my concubine. If there isn't, then I'll just treat it as a good deed. I'll help the Blizzard Silver City destroy the Shao family. Moreover, I won't mention any additional conditions. June Moxie said seriously, "It's a deal. We'll clap our hands as a vow. We can't go back on our words. Do you dare to make this bet?" "Why wouldn't I dare?" The little girl laughed happily. "Speaking of the Blizzard Silver City's affairs, do you think you're clearer than me? If I say there's no more, then there's no more. Clap our hands as a vow. Hurry up." She was even more delighted in her heart. Uncle Moose said that this June Moxie was very cunning. But it seems that he's just a fool now. Not to mention that there's no suitable candidate. Even if there is one, it'll be up to us. If we say there's no more, then there's no more. I'll go back and tell Uncle Moo about this good news. The little girl was afraid that June Moxie would go back on his words. So she couldn't wait to stretch out her smooth and tender palm in front of June Moxie. She shook it repeatedly. It was obvious that she wanted to seal this big deal. She was trying hard to remind herself to be calm and steady. But she couldn't control herself. Her heart was full of pride. Her big clear eyes had almost turned into crescent moons. "Wah, I've on a big bargain this time. You'll be my concubine as long as there's a suitable candidate. You won't regret it." June Moxie obviously didn't trust her. This made Han Yinming very angry. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws. She roared in a low voice, "I mean what I say. I'll be your concubine if there's one. I'll bear witness to this matter. I can't be wrong. Aya, you're such a big man. Hurry up and clap our hands as a vow. Clap our hands as a vow." "No, I still have to think about it." June Moxie had just stretched out his hand when he suddenly retracted it. He looked at Han Yin Meng suspiciously. "Why does it seem like a trap? Why do I smell a conspiracy? Moreover, wouldn't I suffer a great loss if you don't keep your word?" The little girl jumped 3 feet high. She had gone mad. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws in anger. "Do you think I'll go back on my word? Me? Humph. I'm telling you that I, Han Yinming, always keep my word. I've never gone back on my word. Humph. I swear on the Silver Blizzard City's supreme reputation to show my sincerity. If I don't keep my word, and I can't fulfill my promise, then let me, this ant will take off my clothes and walk around the Tianxiang city. It's a deal." June Moxie's eyes lit up. Chapter 633. Pa, pa, pa. June Moxie had just raised his hand when Han Yinming quickly slapped his palm 3 times. She was laughing happily like a cat that had stolen a fish. She was winking and looking very pleased with herself. "You're finished," the little girl announced with a cackle. "I'm telling you now, you're going to lose." "How can that be?" June Moxie looked at the little girl who had sold herself out and was still helping others earn money. He said confidently, "How can I lose?" "If you won't lose." "Ha! The person you want doesn't exist. Today, little Aunt Han will teach your nephew Mo Xie a lesson. This matter doesn't belong to you. If I say there's no such person, then there's no such person. Do you understand now?" The little loli looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. "How can there be no such person? There must be a suitable candidate. How can there be no such person? Because there are 2 princesses of the Silver Blizzard City, right?" June Mo Xie crossed his arms and laughed sinisterly. "Apart from your sister, isn't there also you, little Aunt Han? Did I see wrongly? Are you a young master of the Silver Blizzard City? Not a woman? You're not a woman. What did you say? Me? I. Han, Yiming retorted reflexively. Suddenly, she was tongue-tied. She covered her mouth with her hand. Her complacent smile froze on her face. The next moment, it was replaced by a panic-stricken expression. She had actually forgotten to count herself. Perhaps it should be said that Han Yinming had never considered that she was one of the candidates. Miss Han, you must know who the suitable candidate I was talking about is. Then, please hurry up and tie up the woman that I want. In other words, my concubine, and send her to my room. June Moxie said seriously, this is a matter that concerns the reputation of the Silver Blizzard City. I hope you can do it as soon as possible. I believe that you can do it, because you, Miss Han, have always kept your promises. Han Yinming's face darkened. Her fingers trembled, and the expression in her eyes fluctuated. Suddenly, she remembered to blush. She rolled her eyes and pondered for a long time. Then, she suddenly clutched her stomach and said with a pained expression, why does my stomach suddenly hurt? I have to go back and rest. Why does it hurt so much? Then, she bent her waist and walked away dejectedly. Miss Han, it doesn't matter if your stomach hurts, but don't forget about my concubine. Big Brother is still waiting. Wah the binding method. June Moxie loudly reminded her from behind, but Han Yinming turned a deaf ear to him. She slipped away like a wisp of smoke and disappeared without a trace. Little guy, who asked you to act like an elder in front of me every day? Is it so easy to be this young master's elder? I'm not going to teach you a lesson. You really don't know what restraint is and what it means to quit while you're ahead. June Moxie's heart felt very comfortable. There is no need to mention that feeling of pleasure. Now, let's see how this lass would face him. Ha! I've been suppressing my anger for a few days, and I can finally vent out. A burst of laughter rang out. Jun Wooey flashed out from his side. He clutched his stomach and laughed with a pained expression on his face. It was obvious that he had been suppressing his anger for a long time. As he laughed, he gave a thumbs up. Yeah, you're really amazing. You made this lass sell herself. Third uncle really has to give it to you today. You're too overbearing. June Moxie touched his nose and said with a mischievous smile, Third uncle, isn't this the only way? This lass has been acting like an elder in front of me for the past few days. She keeps calling me nephew. Yeah. What do you think I should do? This time, I reckon she'll be well-behaved for a while. I'm afraid she won't be well-behaved for a while. June Wooey laughed loudly. I reckon this lass won't be able to raise her head in front of you from now on. She won't even dare to take a picture with you. Yeah, I say, don't tell me you've really fallen for this lass. No way. June Moxie shook his head violently. Third uncle, please spare me. Don't randomly matchmake a couple. I already have quite a few. June Wooey laughed meaningfully and reminded him, you two are really not a good match. After all, there's a seniority gap between the two of you. How can you be considered a suitable candidate? Third Master June swaggered off after he finished speaking. I didn't say anything, and you're already planning for your sister-in-law. Besides, Yonghua is married to her master. What's the difference in seniority? June Moxie muttered and felt a little guilty. Suddenly, someone came to report, Young master, someone is asking to see you. He said that his master asked him to come. Let him in. June Moxie perked up. He's finally here. This brat really gave me a fright that time. I want to take a closer look and see what kind of character he is. Young Master June. The person who appeared in front of June Moxie was a young man, at most 24 or 25 years old. Not only was he thin, but he was also not tall. According to June Moxie's judgment, this lad was at most 6 meters tall, but his whole body was unusually coordinated. What's your name? Did you assassinate me some time ago? Are you Chu Chi Huan's disciple? June Moxie stared at the young man in front of him. The young man seemed a little reserved and a little dull, but his eyes were as rigid as the eyes of a dead fish, as if they could not move at all. Wherever he looked, it was as if he was looking at a dead object. Yes. The young man straightened his chest, and there was still no fluctuation in his eyes. My name is Lung Ao. Lung Ao, a very imposing name. June Moxie smiled faintly. Suddenly, his body leaned forward, and his eyes turned cold in an instant. Like a flash of lightning across the sky, an extremely overbearing aura mixed with a domineering, murderous aura covered him with a boom, without any warning. The murderous aura surged like a raging tide, like countless swords wreaking havoc in the air. Several guards at the door only sensed a slight aura, and they sat on the ground in a daze, their faces instantly pale. Lung Ao's dead eyes flashed a sincere shock in an instant, and he was horrified. He tried his best to resist Jun Moxie's aura, trying to fight back, but found that everything was in vain. He had no room to resist. One moment, only one moment, his whole body, his whole soul had been swallowed up, and his whole body became cold. That time, who asked you to kill me? Jun Moxie asked word by word. Lung Ao raised his head stubbornly. Ling Ling looked at him, but had no intention of speaking at all. He bit the tip of his tongue hard, hoping to keep the last trace of clarity. Blood inevitably flowed down from the corner of his mouth. But even so, Lung Ao found that he still could not guarantee that his mind was clear. He only felt that his consciousness was getting blurrier, as if he would fall into endless darkness at any time. "Ha, you really have guts." Jun Moxie laughed, and the overwhelming murderous aura suddenly disappeared. "You're indeed Chu Chi-Huan's disciple. You haven't learned anything else, but you've learned 100% of your tough bones." Lung Ao panted with difficulty and said slowly, "You shouldn't have asked me. Although I'm here to seek refuge with you. I'm not here to seek refuge with you. Although I'm here to seek refuge with you. I have to come under the orders of my master. As an assassin, I will never reveal the name of my client. Life and death are not a big deal, but the rules must never be broken. I won't ask you again." Jun Moxie smiled Ling Ling. "When you tried to assassinate me, I had many enemies who wanted to kill me. But now, they're no longer worthy to be my opponent. It doesn't matter whether you know or not. But what I want is your obedience and loyalty in the future." Jun Moxie said solemnly, "I can give you what you want but can't get. I can also give you everything that your master can't teach you. I can also make your cultivation advance by leaps and bounds. But if you can't give me what I want, then even if you're Chu Chi-Huan's disciple, I don't want you. Do you understand?" "I understand." Lung Ao's face was sweating. The pressure that the young man in front of him brought to him was even greater than his master, Chu Chi-Huan. At the very least, Chu Chi-Huan could not emit such a terrifying, murderous aura. As the successor of Chu Chi-Huan, Lung Ao was well aware of this. No wonder his master said, "Master is just a supreme killer. There's no doubt about this, but that's all. If you go there, you'll be able to see the Emperor of Killers." Could it be that the Emperor of Killers that his master mentioned was this young man in front of him? "Very well. I'll give you 5 days. Within 5 days, you have to find Lian Killer and Tiancan and Deke, then bring them to me." Jun Moxie said decisively, "If you can do it, I'll let you stay and give you everything you want. That's what Chu Chi-Huan asked me to give you. But if you can't do it, you'd better continue your wandering in the pugilistic world." He stared into Lung Ao's eyes and said word by word, "Disciple of Chu Chi-Huan, can you do it?" "I can do it. I can definitely complete this mission." Lung Ao knew that this was a test given to him by the other party, but he was still provoked by Jun Moxie's words. "Can't do it? Wouldn't that be embarrassing his master? Your movement technique is very fast, and it's different from your master. Your master's movement technique is fast and ethereal, as fast as a dream, but you only pursue fast, pure speed. Why is that?" Jun Moxie looked at him and asked. "I don't know either. When my master picked me up and taught me mystic arts, he told me that my path of cultivation is only fast." Speaking of this, it was obvious that this killer named Lung Ao was also very puzzled. "Oh." Jun Xie got up from his seat and placed his hand on the man's shoulder. Then, a wisp of his spiritual power started to circulate through the man's body. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he exclaimed, "It's the Peerless Blade? So that's how it is. Old Chu has the wisdom to recognize people and teach in accordance with their aptitude. It's amazing." Lung Ao was stunned. He did not understand what Jun Daxiao meant at all. Jun Moxie raised his head and exhaled. He waved his hand and said, "Go. Remember, within 5 days." "Yes." Lung Ao turned around and strode out. The following doesn't count. Today, I noticed that there are people chatting in the group. They're talking about the monthly tickets. Everyone is working hard for Fengling's hope, and they're all doing their best to give suggestions. Some brothers and sisters don't have enough subscriptions to get monthly tickets, but they're subscribing to books to get enough monthly tickets to vote. Reading this, my heart is trembling. I'm very excited, very touched, and very ashamed. It turns out that everyone has sacrificed so much for me. What did Fengling do to deserve everyone's sacrifice? Everyone came to read books to relax and pass the time. But because of me, they increased the pressure and sacrificed too much. Even many friends have given monthly tickets through tips. I'm very ashamed. I'm just doing what an author should do. Here, I express my gratitude to everyone. Perhaps a gentle thank you didn't mean anything, but is my gratitude to all of you. Seeing such a situation, my heart is very warm. Yes, no matter what the outcome of this month is, I will feel that I have won. I have won everyone's recognition. This will be my most precious treasure. What a good reader. What a good brother and sister. I can't bear to leave all of you. I really can't. I think I will go on with all of you. In the future, with all of you, I will not be lonely. I will not feel wronged. Chapter 634. June Moxie looked at his back, and the question that had been entangled in his mind for a long time was finally revealed. Why was his speed so fast that he did not even have the time to dodge at that time? With the cultivation of an Earth Xian, his speed could surpass the peak of Tian Xian. So that was it. Unparalleled blade. Or it should be called unparalleled toughness. This guy actually had 2 ligaments in his legs that supported his running speed. Extraordinary talent. This kind of natural strange physique was destined to be much faster than the average person. If he could be specially trained, his speed would undoubtedly reach a jaw-dropping level. No wonder Chu Chihuan chose speed for him, pure speed training. However, although Chu Chihuan's choice was correct and the training was quite good, his training method was still lacking. Therefore, even if Lung Ao's achievements were not low, there was still a limit. At most, he could reach the same height as Chu Chihuan. Lung Ao's future strength would at most be at the level of Chu Chihuan, and most likely would not be as good as his master. But with June Moxie, with this kind of physique, June Moxie could help him step into a higher level, or even the limit of speed. The limit of speed. The only question now is whether you're worth my effort or not. June Moxie thought deeply. Mei Shuiyan and Qian Sun rushed all the way. The speed of these two was already amazing, and there was no hindrance along the way. In just a few days' time, they had already rushed back to Tianan Fa Forest. And now, the experts from the 3 holy lands were still recuperating in the barren mountains. They would definitely not come to kill them. June Moxie's landslide had caused them huge trouble, and it would be difficult to recover without a few months of rest. However, as soon as they entered the Tian Fa forest, Mei Shuiyan immediately flew into a rage. He was so angry that his belly almost burst. The Tian Fa forest was no longer as gloomy as it had been in the past. There were colorful ribbons fluttering everywhere. It was unknown where these colorful ribbons had come from. Almost every tree in the forest had colorful ribbons fluttering in the air. It was as if a rainbow was swaying in the sky. And the tops of those 1,000-year-old and 10,000-year-old trees were the ones with the most colorful ribbons. Whole strips of red ribbons were hanging on them, swaying in the cold wind and making a rustling sound. Looking at the ground, Mei Shuiyan was shocked again. All the Xian beasts above the 5th level had a red cloth belt tied around their waists. Each of them wore the red cloth belt as they passed through the thistles and thistles, scurrying back and forth in the underbrush. In a short while, they had turned into strands. Comparatively speaking, the high-level Xian beasts were wearing red belts that were in much better condition, especially those Xian beasts above the 8th or 9th level. Each and every one of them raised their 2 front paws and walked with their heads held high and their chests puffed out. The red belts around their waists were tied tightly. Underneath the red belts, Each and every one of their furry buttocks swayed left and right. However, each and every one of them still put on a very serious appearance, as if they were very honorable. When Bear Mountain, Long Crane, and the rest of the Xian Beast Kings appeared, Mei Shuyan and Qian Sun's eyes widened. The 6 Beast Kings, Bear King, Tiger King, Crane King, Lion King, Monkey King, and Eagle King, walked with their heads held high. They lined up neatly to welcome them. Each of them walked with a majestic gait. Mei Shuyan and Qian Sun felt as if they were looking at 6 bridegrooms, because these 6 Beast Kings were all dressed in red. There were even flowers in their hair. Along the way, the red light was dazzling. Their faces were full of joy, and their bodies were full of pride. However, each of them looked at Mei Shuyan's body ambiguously. Then, they hurriedly stood up straight. Did something good happen in the Tian Fa forest recently? Mei Shuyan frowned and looked at the 6 people in front of her suspiciously. She could tell with a single glance that the strength of these fellows had greatly increased. If they were to be classified by human standards, then any one of these 6 fellows would have the cultivation of a superior supreme. Moreover, all of them were at the peak of the superior supreme level. Just one more step, and they would be able to enter the ranks of the superior supreme. This kind of shocking improvement was unbelievable, but it was also a pleasant surprise. June and Mosie's pills had really played a very, very big role in this. Cough, cough. Isn't Boss's return the most joyous occasion? Bear Mountain King coughed twice. His face revealed an awkward expression, as if he couldn't wait to show off, but was forcefully suppressing it. He twisted his thick waist and actually made a polite gesture. Boss, please step into the palace. Palace. 4th Brother Bear's mouth actually came out with such a high level of civilized vocabulary. This accident made Mei Shui a little dizzy. When did this fellow become so cultured? The 6 kings clustered around Mei Shuyan and escorted her to the core of the Tian Fa forest. This was originally Mei Shuyan's residence. It was surrounded by mountains and rivers, and the environment was quiet and beautiful. It was the place that Mei Shuyan liked the most. But it was also the place where she was raped by someone the last time. However, the scene in front of her shocked Mei Shuyan once again. The surrounding trees had been chopped down cleanly, leaving only the circle in the center as a barrier. The surrounding area of a few hundred feet had become a large piece of empty land. Not even a single blade of grass could be seen. Looking inside again, the construction had already started on a large scale. Trenches crisscrossed each other, and countless high-level dark beasts were sweating like it was raining as they did hard labor. But even though all of them were exhausted to the point of sticking out their tongues, their faces were filled with excitement and honor. It was as if being able to do hard work here was such an honorable thing. What the hell is going on here? Mei Shuyan suddenly turned around and flew into a rage. She glared fiercely at Bear Mountain and Long Crane. You two, hurry up and tell me. If you can't give me a reasonable explanation, then you'll have to transform again. Mei Shuyan raised her eyebrows, and her face was full of anger. Her eyes were cold and murderous. The 6 Xian Beast Kings were startled at the same time. After a long while, Lion King walked over with his head lowered. Big brother. He isn't this. Celebration, Everything is for Big Brother's celebration. We brothers wanted to celebrate for you, but you're not satisfied. For my celebration? What kind of shameful excuse is this? You messed up my place, and you say it's for me? I'm not satisfied. I'll be damned if I'm satisfied. Mei Shuyan raised her leg and kicked the thick-skinned guy away. She glared fiercely at Long Crane. 3rd Crane, you speak. Big sister, this is actually not that big of a deal. You don't need to take it to heart. Although, some people might not understand this, but the brothers of Tian Fa will always support you and love you. We hope that big sister, this, bravely open your arms and embrace your happiness. I don't know what I'm talking about. Long Crane's sharp mouth opened and closed, and his mouth was full of strange words. At least, Mei Shuyan couldn't understand what this guy was talking about. The more she listened, the more confused she became. That's right, big sister. So what if you're a Xian beast? We're the race that contributes the most to the continent. Why are you still worried about those talkative people? Just do what needs to be done. Don't worry. If anyone dares to say another word, I'll immediately lead my brothers over and annihilate their entire family." The Eagle King's hooked nose twitched, and his voice was filled with killing intent as he spoke with righteous indignation. "That's right. That's right. Open your mind and embrace your happiness." The rest of the Beast Kings echoed. "What's wrong? What's going on? You're making me confused." Mei Shuiyin put her hand on her forehead and said painfully, "Can't you guys come out and explain to me what's going on? It's like this, big sister." The Monkey King jumped out and said, "As soon as we heard about Big Sister's happy event, we immediately started." "Wait. Stop." Mei Shuiyin finally grasped the main point. "Happy event? What happy event? What happy event?" The Crane King, the Lion King, the Monkey King, and the Eagle King all had a strange look on their faces. Bear Mountain and Earthcracker were quietly and slowly moving backwards. "Big sister, cough cough, don't take it to heart. In fact, this matter isn't shameful at all." The Monkey King was stunned for a while and quickly consoled her. "Not shameful? What matter isn't shameful?" Mei Shuin was fuming. "What the hell are you guys talking about?" Venerable Mei was obviously on the verge of going berserk. "Isn't it because of you and brother-in-law?" The Monkey King grinned and said in a low voice. Then he gathered his courage and said, "Boss, we're all very happy that you've found your own happiness. As for your happy occasion, we didn't have the time to attend it. So, we decided to celebrate it in Tian Fa on our own, and..." He pointed with his finger and said flatteringly, "For example, this is the palace that we prepared for you and your brother-in-law. Since you are married, you will definitely live together. Ha ha. Also, over there, I'm going to ask people to plant that kind of fluffy grass. In the future, if you have children, you can play there. Is soft, safe, and convenient. Married? Children? What are you talking about?" Mei Shuiyan's face gradually darkened. Her whole body was brewing a dangerous aura. She turned her head and looked at Long Crane like a sharp sword. "Third brother Crane, explain to me." Long Crane's mouth opened and closed twice. He deliberated for a long time and finally said with difficulty, "Big sister obviously didn't want us to know that you chose to secretly get married outside. But we've known each other for so many years, and we're already like family. No matter what, we have to do our best for Big Sister." Ever since Fourth Brother Bear and Ninth Brother Tiger brought back the news of Big Sister's happy event, we all had a discussion and decided to celebrate together in Tian Fa. Besides, you asked Fourth Brother Bear to bring back so much money. Wouldn't it be a waste if we don't spend it? Recommending my brother's book, Rebirth Sweeps the Wind and Clouds, an urban novel. This guy's trying to get into the list of new books. Everyone, go and help him. This guy is a lascivious man, and I reckon his books will be lascivious. Well, of course, we can read them, but we must keep our purity. Don't be led astray by him. You will all advance with me, and sooner or later you will all become as pure as me. I have no doubt about this. Chapter 635. Long Crane chuckled as he finished speaking. He thought that his words were very appropriate. But he saw that Mei Shuiyin's face was getting more and more unsightly. In fact, it looked like it was going to turn into a thunderstorm at any time. Long Crane was quick to react and immediately shut his mouth. He was secretly perturbed. Did I not express myself clearly enough? Bear Mountain, Earthcracker. You too. Ha ha. Mei Shuiyin was so angry that she burst into laughter. Her expression was very dangerous as she leaned forward and said in a gloomy voice, "So, I'm already married. How come I didn't know about this?" This, that. Big Bear and Earthcracker's hairy faces twisted in a split second. Their faces turned red, and they became tongue-tied. In fact, they couldn't speak a word. "You're still talking about this and that? Who did I get married to? What did I get married?" Mei Shuiyin's eyes flashed as she stepped forward. Suddenly, she roared, "Bear Mountain, Earthcracker, raise your heads and look at me." Bear Mountain trembled. His face was so bitter that it seemed as if juice was about to drip out of it. He didn't know where to put his hands and feet. Long Crane was stunned for a moment. Then, he jumped up and screamed in a strange voice. "Fourth Brother Bear? You bastard. The news you brought back is fake? Boss isn't married? And you. Suddenly a loud shout was heard. "You have a lot of guts. Do you want to die?" It's going to happen sooner or later. Big Bear secretly breathed through his nose and retorted, rolling his eyelids. You bastard. You urged me to do such a thing to tarnish Boss's reputation. You've made a big joke out of yourself. You're still trying to reason with me? You still dare to refute? Long Crane was furious. Bear Mountain was the one who brought back the news. But he was the one who mobilized and arranged everything in the Tian Fa forest. How could he not panic? You're still shouting over there? Shut up. Mei Shuiyin fiercely turned her head and looked at Long Crane. One more word, and I'll break your neck. Long Crane trembled and quickly shut his mouth. He didn't dare to say a word. Big sister, this is what brother-in-law wants us to do. Big Bear finally couldn't bear this huge pressure and said while crying, "Big brother, I am loyal to you, as bright as the sun and the moon." Oh ho ho ho! Mei Shuiyin was so angry that the veins on her forehead were bulging. She took a deep breath and asked, "Was it June Moxie?" Hearing this, everyone had a strange look on their faces. "Didn't you deny it? Why did you say June Moxie the moment I mentioned brother-in-law?" Yes. Bear Mountain heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Big sister, we're doing this for your own good. Brother-in-law is a good person." Mei Shuiyin's chest rose and fell violently. Her face was ashen as she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and roared like thunder. "I'm going to kill all of you bastards. All of you die. If I don't make all of you happy, you want to know why the flowers are so red?" Venerable Mei, who was able to say such words, was obviously completely enraged. Inexplicably, Mei Shuiyin moved like lightning and attacked. Bang, bang, bang. In the depths of the Tian Fa forest, dust filled the sky. A group of Beast Kings were beaten up by Mei Shuiyin with her fists. Although the Beast King's strength had improved a lot and had climbed to the superior supreme level, they were nothing in front of their big sister. Not to mention that their strength was inferior. Even if they could resist, they would not dare to resist. Long Crane and the other Beast Kings had spent a lot of effort to create this vast, open space. Not a single bit of it was wasted. It became a great place for them to be abused. One by one, strong bodies were thrown up like rubber balls and then fell down. Then they were hit and sent flying again. Screams were heard one after another, each more miserable and louder than the last. Although they were screaming miserably and seemed to be in dire straits, all the Beast Kings felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Boss didn't go too hard on them. It wasn't as heavy as they had imagined. At least, it wasn't as ruthless as before. This time, although they looked furious, they only suffered some physical pain. Yes, they would only suffer some physical pain. There would definitely not be any serious internal injuries. Big Brother's actions could be said to be very appropriate. The Beast Kings indeed looked like they had been beaten to the extreme, but in reality, they were not seriously injured. All the Beast Kings had thick skin and flesh, so what was the big deal about this little bit of beating? It was almost not even physical pain. Physical pain would still cause some injuries, and it would only hurt for a while. It was not even as serious as when they were sparring and accidentally getting injured. However, he still had to save face for the sake of his boss. So, the Beast Kings cried even more miserably. Each and every one of them cried out in pain. That sound was as if they were suffering from the cruelest torture. "Ah!" Big Bear cried out in cadence. He winked as he was kicked up into the air. He waved his hands and feet as he flew in the air. Then he screamed, "Hiya! Big sister, you're so strong. My bones are going to break." "Ah!" Earthcracker imitated him and screamed. His face was full of hemorrhoids. He covered his buttocks and screamed, "My buttocks have split into 2 pieces." Everyone looked at him in disdain. This idiot doesn't even know how to brag. Whose buttocks don't have 2 pieces? "Oh, Careless Rock held his head as he was kicked away. He screamed, "Big Sister is so powerful. My legs are going to break." Everyone looked at him in disdain. Why are you holding your head and screaming when your legs are going to break? You don't even know how to act. The Monkey King did a series of somersaults. He shouted, "Big Sister's kick is so ruthless. It kicked me so hard that I somersaulted dozens of times. So painful. So painful." All the Beast Kings roared in unison. One roar caused the mountains to collapse and the earth to crack. Another roar caused the sun and moon to lose their luster. "Big Sister, please spare us." They begged for mercy together. Their voices were so loud that it didn't seem like they were begging for mercy. Instead, it seemed like they were joking. Mei Shuyan was undoubtedly very angry when she saw this scene. However, she also felt a little shy and happy at the same time. This was the feeling of a young girl. However, it wasn't convenient for her to show this kind of embarrassment. So, she could only find an excuse to vent her anger. She could also use this as a pretext to cover up her feelings. So, she naturally stopped when she attacked. However, she didn't expect that these guys were so thick-skinned and thick-skinned. Moreover, they were so dumb that they couldn't think straight. Since they could see that she wasn't really angry, wouldn't it be fine if they just put on a show? Who would have thought that this bunch of idiots didn't even know how to put on a show? Each of them was worse than the other. In the end, they even cried out in pain happily. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was a fight to see who had the loudest voice. Looking at them again, their faces were originally filled with fear and restraint. But now, they were all grinning from ear to ear and winking happily. They were all sticking out their tongues and making funny faces. Were they getting beaten up or celebrating the new year? This time, Mei Shuyan really couldn't hold on any longer. Her face turned red. She was really angry out of humiliation. Thus, the strength of her hands and legs increased to a considerable level. Oh my God! Help! Spare me! A series of blood-curdling screams resounded once again. This time, it was different from before. Previously, everyone could hear that the screams sounded miserable and louder, but in reality, there was no pain at all. However, this time it was the complete opposite. The 6 Beast Kings were gritting their teeth and hissing as they sucked in cold air. It was obvious that the pain was coming from deep within their bones, that they didn't even have the intention to scream anymore. All they could do was gasp. It was really too painful. Their eyes were filled with pain and confusion. What's going on? Why did the situation suddenly change? Could it be that everyone's passionate performance just now wasn't good enough? It must be that Hu Jio's acting was too lame, or that Monkey Chi's acting was too pretentious. I'm the only one who acted well. It's all because of those idiots. They're too unlucky. Heavy punches continuously landed on their faces. In just a short while, most of the members of the number 1 group, which represented the highest strength in the Tianfa forest, were all bruised and swollen. Long Crane's long mouth was almost broken. Bear Mountain, the Bear King, was directly turned into a Panda King. Tiger King was actually beaten into his original form. He was a big white tiger without a single strand of hair. Then he was grabbed by the tail and thrown into the air. Then he rolled his eyes and fainted. The tiger seemed to have turned into a sick cat. The Monkey King was beaten until he rolled in the air like a rubber ball. This time, it wasn't spontaneous. Instead, it was due to the inertia of the external force. His brain was ringing endlessly. Just as the Lion King stood up in a daze, he was immediately hit in the face by hundreds of heavy punches. His face was blooming like a peach blossom blossoming like a blooming peach blossom, and stars swirling in the sky. He swayed and fell down, directly turning into a pig-head king. The Eagle King's hooked nose was almost beaten into a Lion King's nose. The Snake King, who was watching the battle from the side, was originally laughing happily. But now his face was pale and his whole body was trembling. The cheering and clapping just now had long since been thrown out of the window. Later on, their eyes were staring straight at the scene. Oh my God, so Boss is really angry. Finally, Mei Shuyan let out a long sigh and landed gracefully on the ground. She looked coldly at the Beast Kings lying on the ground and snorted. How is it? Did you guys enjoy yourselves? Did you guys enjoy yourselves this time? Why aren't you shouting anymore? Where did your enthusiasm go? Yes, yes. The Panda King, Bear Mountain, wanted to cry, but had no tears. He nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. You didn't break your bones? Say it. Do you still dare to mess around? Mei Shui Yan's face flushed with an almost imperceptible blush. We won't dare, we won't dare. The 6 Beast Kings nodded their heads in unison. The sickly Cat King, Earthcracker, quickly crawled out of the pit and transformed back into his human form. Don't worry, big sister. I'll order them to leave immediately. Long Crane shook his dizzy head and turned around in a daze. Then he shouted loudly, Get the hell out of here, all of you. This bullshit palace is not going to be built anymore. All of you get out. Get out. Bullshit palace? Not going to be built anymore? Mei Shuiyan raised her eyes and looked at Long Crane with a red face. What do you mean? The gap between the monthly votes is getting bigger and bigger. Brothers, sisters, are you going to admit defeat like this? It's 15:10 in the afternoon. I'm going to erupt nonstop from now on. Until midnight. I'm the first in the monthly votes. I'm going to erupt until midnight. I'm going to lose the monthly votes. I'm going to erupt until midnight. I don't know how much more I can erupt. Brothers and sisters, please give me strength. Today, I'm going to open the prelude to the Silver Blizzard City. The excitement is about to begin. I'm begging for monthly votes. Chapter 636. What? Long Crane was at a complete loss. He sat down on the ground and shook his head vigorously. Then he quickly dug his ears. Did I get beaten silly by boss? Am I hearing things now? Didn't you beat us up because you were angry? Why are you saying this now? What are you talking about? What I mean is, since it's already like this, there's no way to restore it to its original state. Then we'll just make the best use of it and continue to build. Mei Shuiyan knew that she was being unreasonable. She blushed and said fiercely, What? Do you still dare to refuse? What? Boss is blushing? We're not dreaming, are we? Willing, very willing. The 6 Beast Kings' brains short-circuited at the same time. They looked dazed and nodded repeatedly. Then let's leave it at that. Mei Shuiyan's expression was one of anger, one of embarrassment, and one of joy. She rolled her eyes and suddenly stomped her feet heavily. You gluttons, come with me. I have something to ask you. A wisp of fragrance floated away with a whoosh. Venerable, Mei could feel his face burning. It was too embarrassing. The 6 Beast Kings looked at each other, puzzled. What was going on? But they all had a common understanding in their hearts. Today's beating was for nothing, and it was an injustice. That was 3 levels of injustice. Qian Sun's Serpent Queen's face was ashen as she said, What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. What are you waiting for? Do you want to get beaten up? Woo. She suddenly covered her face and sobbed. She didn't get beaten up? Why is she crying? What kind of explanation is this? The 6 Beast Kings were shocked. What the F***CK? What happened today was too unimaginable. A lesson for no reason turned into a beating. Boss actually blushed? What's more, the people who got beaten up didn't even cry, but those that didn't get beaten started to cry. What kind of explanation was this? Mei Shuiyan sat at the head of the table. The 7 Beast Kings were divided into 2 rows. They took deep breaths and touched their wounds from time to time. The youngest is still in seclusion? Mei Shuiyan frowned. Yes. The 6 Beast Kings replied succinctly. First, tell me how many Xian beasts are above level 9. I want to hear the detailed numbers. Mei Shuiyan snorted. The bear tribe has 1,764 Xian beasts above level 9. Among them, there are 824 Xian beasts above level 9. There are 640 Xian level 9 Xian beasts above level 9. There are 300 peak level 9 beasts. There are a total of 2,169 cranes above level 9. Among them, 1,184 are at level 9, 740 are at level 9, and the number of peak level cranes is slightly smaller. There are less than 250 of them. The crane tribe has 2,169 Xian beasts above level 9. Among them, there are 1,184 Xian level 9 beasts. There are 7 peak level 9 beasts. Long Crane said, the Eagle King has 4,800 Xian beasts above level 9. Among them, there are 3,006 Xian level 9 beasts. There are 1,050 peak level 9 beasts. The Eagle King was a little ashamed. His tribe had the most Xian beasts, but the number of peak level 9 beasts was the least. The Monkey tribe has 2,500 Xian beasts above level 9. Among them, there are 1,400 Xian level 9 beasts. There are 600 Xian level 9 beasts. The Monkey King Ho Chi looked a little bitter. Among all the Xian beasts, his tribe was the most difficult to manage. Some time ago, he was injured and fell back a level. Many of his subordinates rebelled and were ready to make trouble. This had dealt a serious blow to his reputation. If he had not used the medicine that Jun Moxie had given him to increase his strength and reach the level of Great Master level, he would have been in trouble. I will personally take care of the Monkey tribe later. Mei Shui and Lingling looked at him and said, "You bastard. You can't even manage your subordinates. What kind of king are you?" "Boss, Ho Chi was a little dejected and wronged. Ever since he was injured, he felt that it was not easy to get his cultivation. He was always kind to his challengers. He was even more afraid of accidentally killing them. Especially after his strength had increased, he had been more lenient. But his subordinates didn't know what was good for them. They were getting more and more rampant. You will never achieve great things if you are soft-hearted." Mei Shuian snorted and looked at the Lion King. The Lion tribe has 3,600 Xian level 9 beasts. Among them, there are 1,750 Xian level 9 beasts. The Lion King grinned and said, "There were 3,605 of them. But 5 blind ones challenged me some time ago. I tore them apart one by one. Now, they're even more obedient than newborn cubs." The Lion King smiled proudly. "Good job. In troubled times, severe punishment is needed. In power, severe punishment is needed. If you want to be the leader, you must have the courage to pay the price." Mei Shuiyan's face was gloomy. She nodded slowly. The Snake tribe has 4,300 Xian level 9 beasts. 3,000 Xian level 9 beasts. 700 Xian level 9 beasts. 600 Xian level 9 beasts. The Qian Sun Serpent Queen calculated in her heart and said, "Not bad." Mei Shuiyan smiled approvingly. The last one is the Leopard tribe. Ever since the Leopard tribe lost their former Leopard King, a new Leopard King hasn't been born. During this time, they don't accept each other. They have fought several times. More than 10 of them have died. Bear Mountain King murmured as he peeped at Mei Shuiyan's face. After the death of the Leopard King, Bear King was temporarily in charge of the Leopard tribe. However, those fellows were not honest. Moreover, Bear King was a lazy person. So, it was not a surprise that there was chaos in the tribe. "Give me a specific number." "I don't want to hear that." Mei Shuiyan's eyes turned cold. "I will let the Leopard tribe have a good time in the afternoon." Hearing this, the Beast Kings showed a gloating expression. The Leopard tribe has 3,900 Xian level 9 beasts. 2,100 Xian level 9 beasts. 1,300 Xian level 9 beasts. 500 Xian level 9 beasts. Bear Mountain King said, "Well, what about the Rock tribe? How many of them are there after the second brother left?" Mei Shuiyan's eyes darkened as she asked. The Rock tribe has 1,100 Xian level 9 beasts. 500 Xian level 9 beasts. 370 Xian level 9 beasts. 230 Xian level 9 beasts. Long Crane sighed. And the youngest Eagle tribe has 4,600 Xian level 9 beasts. 2,900 Xian level 9 beasts. 2,200 Xian level 9 beasts. 500 Xian level 9 beasts. The Eagle tribe has been developing quite well during this period of time. You, third brother Crane, have contributed a lot in this. But the Rock tribe, all right, we'll talk about it in the afternoon. Mei Shuiyan frowned deeply and said slowly, "Right now, The most important thing is to create a few king beasts. Create a few king beasts? Hearing this, the beast kings could not help but feel a little dizzy. Could the king of the Xian beasts also be created? Although there were already enough shocks today, this latest one was still a little too shocking. Wasn't this a little too fantastical? This afternoon, gather all the Xian beasts that are about to reach the shape-shifting stage in the entire Tian Fa. Mei Shuiyin calmly issued an order. Although her tone was light, it contained a majestic aura that was as strict as a mountain. Boss, did brother-in-law give you a lot of good pills? Bear Mountain King's eyes lit up as he asked excitedly. As he said this, saliva actually flowed out of the corner of his mouth. With that pair of panda eyes on his face, it was as comical as it could get. And he did give a lot. This time, the strength of our Tian Fa is finally going to take a huge leap. There will no longer be the 3 holy beasts and 1 ferocious beast. There will only be 1 ferocious 3 holy beasts. Mei Shuiyin also revealed a faint smile. There was a look of longing in her eyes. Third brother, fourth brother, how many of the Xian beasts that are close to shape-shifting? Long Crane and Bear Mountain nervously exchanged information for a while. Then Long Crane said, there are about 500 that have reached the shape-shifting stage. Fourth brother and I have done a detailed count, and the exact number is about 489. Boss, you also know that Xian beast shape-shifting is one of the most difficult hurdles for us Xian beasts. Every generation of Xian beasts that are close to shape-shifting has this number, and sometimes even more. But there have never been more than 20 Xian beasts that have succeeded in shape-shifting. Most of them just stay stuck there until they die of old age. Long Crane sighed and said, fourth brother and the others had brought back some elixirs, and they were very effective. Everyone had leveled up by at least 1 level. The Lion King and the Monkey King had leveled up by 2 levels. Their strength had soared, but it's already a blessing to have such a number of elixirs. We can't have hundreds of them at once. So we should choose the strongest ones and give them to them to ensure that they can shape-shift smoothly. Fourth Crane spoke slowly. He was secretly looking at Mei Shuiyin's complexion from the corner of his eyes. His words weren't optimistic, but the hope in his voice was evident. Mei Shuiyin's face sank. Her brows were slightly wrinkled. It seemed as if she was worried about something. Long Crane's heart sank. His words were getting more and more meaningless. I understand what you're saying. There aren't many Xian beasts at the peak of 9th level among the different clans, but there's still thousands of them. So, where are we going to find so many elixirs? Mei Shuiyin said in a serious tone. Everyone sighed in unison. So, we can only strengthen those who can shape-shift first to ensure that they can safely break through this hurdle. As for the future, we'll talk about it later. Mei Shuiyin took a deep breath. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. Long Crane's mouth opened so wide that it almost dislocated. He stammered, BB boss. What did you just say? 500 Xian beasts at the peak of 9th level. At the same time? Is there a problem? Mei Shuiyin looked at him strangely. Don't tell me you don't want to. If you don't want to, the Crane clan can choose not to participate in this breakthrough. I didn't. Long Crane suddenly jumped up and let out a roar unique to the Tiger King. The other Beast Kings almost thought that the old Crane had transformed into a tiger. Chapter 637. But the Beast Kings immediately understood what Mei Shuiyin meant, and they couldn't help but cheer. Although Tian Fa's strength will experience a huge leap after this, reaching a height that has never been seen before, the favor we owe Jun Emosia is too great, so great that it's hard for us to repay him. Mei Shuiyin sighed lightly. She suddenly felt an inexplicable warmth in her heart when she said this name. What are you talking about, elder sister? We and our brother-in-law are a family. You and your husband don't owe each other anything. Kaka, Earthcracker smiled mischievously and said, we are brothers-in-law, so we obviously have to take advantage of our brother-in-law's glory. Isn't that right, everyone? That's right, that's right. Brother-in-law doesn't eat brother-in-law's food and drink brother-in-law's food. How can we call ourselves brother-in-law's brother-in-law? Although we are a little larger in number. The Beast Kings roared with laughter. All of you shut up. Are you itching for a beating again? Mei Shuyan was embarrassed and angry at the same time. You bunch of useless things. The Beast Kings froze and kept quiet out of fear. Fourth brother Xiong, you said, he said that he would rather come to Tian Fa Force live. Mei Shuyan pouted and sulked for a long time. No one knew what she was thinking, but she suddenly opened her mouth and asked Bear Mountain, "Did he really say that? Elder sister, what are you talking about? There's no head or tail. Which him?" Bear Mountain scratched his head and asked, as if he really didn't know. Fourth brother Bear, Mei Shuyan shouted, "Come here. I'll help you loosen your bones. I guarantee that you'll feel comfortable, and you'll understand once you're comfortable. Oh, there's no need to trouble yourself. Aren't you talking about brother-in-law? I understand. Bear Mountain seemed to have come to a sudden realization and said, "Yes, didn't brother-in-law say that at that time?" This point, Old Tiger 9 can testify. Both of us are honest people and won't talk big. Earthcracker hastily nodded. "Yes, I can testify. Big sister, brother-in-law is sincere to you. The two of us are so honest. When have we ever boasted?" All the Beast Kings looked at them in disdain. "You two think you're being honest? You don't know how to boast? Too shameless." The redness on Mei Shuyan's face deepened. She heaved a sigh of relief, and her eyes flickered for a while. Then she said, "Let's not talk about that. Jun Moxie is about to send his troops to Blizzard Silver City. This move, firstly, was to intimidate the world. Secondly, it was for revenge. There were countless mysteries in this. The three Holy Lands would also intervene in this matter. Since our Tian Fa has received so much grace from him, this time we must do our best to help him achieve this goal. Don't worry, big sister. We will definitely do our best to support brother-in-law's actions, and we will not hesitate to go through fire and water. At that time, our entire Tian Fa forest will be mobilized, and we will directly trample the snowy mountains into plains. F***CK, their granny." All the Beast Kings patted their chests and promised solemnly. All of them thumped their chests so loudly that it shook the heavens. Everyone began to call him brother-in-law, but Mei Shuyan did not stop them, nor did she object. It was as if she had quietly accepted the word brother-in-law. So during this period of time, we must raise everyone's strength as much as possible. Mei Shuyan's eyes turned as cold as ice. From this afternoon onwards, the entire Tian Fa forest will be on lockdown. In 7 days, 489 peak 9th level Shin beasts must complete their transformation. After that, prepare 6,000 flying-type Shin beasts and 5,000 ground-type Shin beasts. Starting from the peak of the king rank, even if the three Holy Lands really turn out in full force, my Tian Fa will fight them head-on. We will kill them with an unprecedented blood red. Mei Shuyan's killing intent soared to the sky, and she issued a strict order. Yes, Crane King, Bear King, and the rest bowed in unison, their faces solemn, and their expressions fervent. After 10,000 years, Tian Fa had finally risen again today. Mei Shuyan stood on top of an ancient tree, looking into the distance. Her expression was calm, but there was a hint of longing in the depths of her eyes. It had only been a few days since they parted, but why was she already so longing for him? She really missed those days in the past, fighting side by side, burning passion in the igloo, whispering sweet nothings. In any case, everything related to him appeared in front of her eyes, just standing there in a daze. Jun Moxie's handsome face suddenly appeared in Mei Shuyan's heart, and she also remembered the words Jun Moxie said before she left. Spring flowers bloom. One sword to break Blizzard Silver City. Spring flowers bloom. One sword to break Blizzard Silver City. This was the deadline he set. There were still about 2 months left. That enemy had set the date on the 2nd of February. Time was tight. So Mei Shuyan wanted to build the strongest Xian beast army in this period of time, to coordinate with her lover's magnificent feat of flattening Blizzard's Silver City. And in this period of time, Jun Moxie had also released this news in Tianxiang City. Once this shocking news was made known to the world, the whole world would be shaken and shocked. Everyone could clearly see that the Jun family was going to take revenge on Blizzard Silver City when spring flowers bloom. This rare war was unavoidable. 10 years of loyal souls cannot rest in peace. 3,000 days and nights of blood red. The Azure Dragon raises its head. The 2nd of February, thousands of troops trample Blizzard's Silver City. It was said that Jun Moxie suddenly wrote this poem after one night of drinking. Then he smashed a wine cup, and his body reeked of alcohol and murderous intent as he roared. 2nd of February, break Blizzard's Silver City, destroy that traitor Shao, and avenge our great enmity. Although others did not understand why Jun Moxie set the date on the 2nd of February, Jun Moxie himself knew in his heart. However, Jun Mo Xian knew it in his heart. Moreover, he had sufficient reason to do so. The 2nd of February, the dragon raises its head. This was a Chinese proverb. On the 2nd of February next year, I will represent the dragon god of China and raise my head to look down on the world. I, Jun Moxie, hereby announce to the world, anyone who has good relations with the Shao family of Blizzard Silver City, get out of my way, or I will kill them all. Kill them all. Kill them all. Those who obey me will prosper, and those who oppose me will perish. Who in the world dares to defy me? Jun Mo Xie's poem and the 3 sentences of his roar had spread throughout the entire Xian continent in just a few short days with the speed and volume of a thunderclap. It was close to the end of the year, but the continent was filled with huge waves. This year was destined to not be a peaceful one. At least, many people would not be able to eat on this New Year's Eve and were deeply worried. And on the 29th of December, Jun Moxie unexpectedly received a letter from Li Yuran. There were only a few short sentences on it. I'm leaving. I'm going to the Great Golden City. Tomorrow is the New Year's Eve, but I don't want to spend it in Tianxiang City. With you around, I'm really depressed. Maybe one day, I will come back. I will fight with you again. This time, I lost before the fight even started. But next time, I will fight no matter what. Also, be careful of the Bloodsword Hall, changing clothes. The signature was, the leisurely departed Li Yuran. Jun Moxie slowly held the note in his hand and smiled faintly, letting the note curl up into a ball in his hand. He sighed softly. Li Yuran had actually chosen to leave home on the 29th of December. The day before the New Year's Eve, he had left home thousands of miles away. Even a prodigal son like Jun Moxie had never experienced such a thing. Therefore, it was difficult for him to understand Li Yuran's current mood. However, Jun Moxie felt an inexplicable sense of sadness. Presumably, Li Yuran must have felt a trace of sadness in his heart, no matter how ruthless and cold-blooded he was. He was born into a wealthy family and had never had to worry about food or clothing. But he didn't necessarily enjoy many good things in his life. On the contrary, he had seen nothing but cruelty, blood, and the destruction of humanity since he was a child. He had seen nothing but intrigue and power struggles. He may not be better off than me. This pampered young master of a wealthy family has finally chosen to leave. Moreover, he has chosen to leave at such a time of family reunion. Jun Moxie understood that Li Yuran had used his decisive action to show his determination to stay away from power struggles. At the same time, he had also vaguely revealed a piece of information to him. Be careful of the Bloodsword Hall's change of clothes. Yes, the Bloodsword Hall that had changed its clothes was naturally no longer the Bloodsword Hall. It could be an ordinary citizen, a well-off businessman, a dignified military officer, or even a serving official. Of course, it could also be an imperial bodyguard, but no matter what, this subtle piece of information could be considered as Jun Moxie owing Li Yuran a favor. Although Jun Moxie was no longer afraid of any sudden attacks from any forces, Li Yuren's information had pointed him in a direction that Jun Moxie had previously neglected. Perhaps Li Yuren's purpose in doing this was to make a final effort for his family. In fact, it could even be said that he was fighting for his family's future. He had quietly made Jun Mo Xie owe him a favor twice. Then, the leader of the Li family's younger generation had quietly left. Now, the Li family had become a toothless, decadent tiger. There was no longer any threat to them. Therefore, Li Yuren had clearly laid out this fact, hoping that Jun Moxie would give the Li family a way out. This was Li Yuren's true intention. Although he was cold-blooded, although he only cared about profit and would do anything to achieve his goals, there was still a trace of warmth in his heart, a trace of kinship. Jun Moxie let out a long sigh and shook his head. He did not say anything. With a wave of his hand, the piece of paper turned into fragments and floated away with the wind. With a whoosh, the fragments disappeared without a trace. Sounds of laughter could be heard coming from the hall of the inner courtyard. All the members of the Jun family had gathered together. Grandpa Jun was greatly comforted. Dongfang Wenxin, Jun Moxie, Jun Wui, and Guan Qinghan were sitting around. Beside them, Degu Xiaoi was also there, refusing to go back no matter what. The little girl's thoughts were very simple. I have to watch over it. What if I don't get my share? Therefore, the little girl had made up her mind. Tomorrow, she would go home to celebrate the New Year's Eve. Once it was past midnight, which was the first day of the new year, she would come back to watch over it. This time, the cooked duck must not be allowed to fly away no matter what. It's already midnight. Everyone, please search through your box of monthly votes and see if there are any leftovers. Or you can click on the monthly votes page. Who knows, you might get a surprise. Wow, I still have a waha. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.